Chapter 748. After a short period of silence, everyone thought that 6,800 was an extremely high price, and it would be difficult for anyone to continue bidding. After all, although the nebula Ganoderma was something that could only be encountered and not sought, any treasure would always have a price that was acceptable in one's heart. 6,800 3-star primordial stones was equivalent to 68 million 3-star primordial stones. It was already extremely high, but at this moment, a voice came from a VIP box on the top floor. 8,800 3-star primordial stones. What? The entire auction hall was shocked. 8,800 3-star primordial stones was actually so rich. Everyone's gaze suddenly turned towards the box where the voice came from. In the various VIP boxes on the top floor, there were also people looking through the curtains. Then, there was a subtle fluctuation of aura that was very complicated. Sui also glanced at the box next door. He frowned slightly. Qin-san had just mentioned that it was the box where the people from the Sacred Mountain were. In a certain VIP box, where the people from the Heavenly Profound sect were, some of their gazes became very complicated. Lu Xiaohu stood at the door of the box with an ugly expression. He also knew that it was the box where the people from the Sacred Mountain were bidding. Moreover, they directly raised the price to 8,000. It was obvious that the Sacred Mountain was determined to get the nebula Ganoderma. Lu Xiaohu's expression was unpleasant as he looked at Jian Wanyan. Jian Wanyan's expression was also dignified. This time, Gong Qinxing's soul quality was quasi-heaven grade. If he could get the nebula Ganoderma to refine the star soul replenishing heavenly pill, it was very likely that his soul would improve further. Therefore, the nebula Ganoderma was also a must. However, the Sacred Mountain seemed to be determined to get it. If he continued to bid, it would undoubtedly be a competition with the Sacred Mountain. Gritting his teeth, Jian Wanyan nodded to Lu Xiaohu. No matter what, this time, even if he had to compete with the Sacred Mountain, he must get the nebula Ganoderma. 13,000 3-star primordial stones. And at this moment, just when Lu Xiaohu was about to open the bid again, a voice came from a box in the corner of the top floor. The voice was extremely young, but very clear. What? 13,000 3-star primordial stones. In the auction hall, some people were already dumbfounded. 13,000 3-star primordial stones was equivalent to 100 million 1-star primordial stones. This price was enough to purchase a Soul Star Heavenly Replenishing Pill. Although the Soul Star Heavenly Mending Pill had a price, it was unlikely to be available on the market. 13,000 3-star Origin Stones. Lu Xiaohu, who was about to bid again, was dumbfounded. He was just about to raise the price by a little, but this price of 10,000 was already enough to make him shudder. What a familiar voice. Sui listened to the clear voice and felt a sense of déjà vu. Shi Wuqing's face was slightly pale. He was already unable to raise the price of 6,800. Now, he couldn't bear the price of 8,000. Now that the price of 13,000 3-star Origin Stones had been set, Merciless West knew that he was not fated to obtain the Nebula Lingji today. 13,000 3-star Primordial Stones. It's already at 13,000 3-star Primordial Stones. The Nebula Lingji is the main ingredient to refine the Soul Star Heavenly Mending Pill. It can improve the quality of one's soul. Is there a higher price? The old man on the auction stage was also surprised. Then, his provocative words spread again. Today, many people were here for the Nebula Lingji. Although the price was already very high, it was still within the Spirit Treasure Pavilion's expectations. 11,000 3-star Primordial Stones. In the St. Mountain box, another voice came out. Someone was bidding for the Nebula Lingji. From 8,000 to 11,000, the voice seemed to be unhappy. 12,000 3-star Primordial Stones. The clear voice from the corner continued. 14,000 3-star Primordial Stones. 15,000 3-star Primordial Stones. 16,000 3-star Primordial Stones. 17,000 3-star Primordial Stones. Voices of tit for tat continued to spread. There was no need for the old man on the auction stage to incite. No matter how much the St. Mountain box bid, The clear voice from the corner box did not back down. It was as if he was determined to win at all costs. Everyone could hear the displeasure in the Saint Mountain's voice. The price of 17,000 three-star primordial stones was already a terrifying number. Even the Saint Mountain couldn't raise the price any further. More importantly, it seemed that the Saint Mountain's bid was useless. The person in the corner box didn't seem like he was going to give up. 17,000 three-star primordial stones. Everyone was stunned. 17,000 three-star primordial stones. This was a terrifying price. There shouldn't be any more bids, right? Some experts felt their hearts palpitating as they whispered inwardly. In the heavenly profound sex box, Lu Xiaohu, Jin Wanyin, and the others were dumbfounded. They were glad that they didn't continue to raise the price and compete with the Saint Mountain. Based on the way the Saint Mountain box was raising the price, it wasn't something the heavenly profound sect could compete with. Of course, this didn't mean that the heavenly profound sect didn't have the ability to buy the Nebula Ganoderma. That would be looking down on the heavenly profound sect. This time, although Jin Wanyin and the others were the elders of the heavenly profound sect, they couldn't represent the entire sect. None of them could bear the responsibility of competing for the Nebula Ganoderma at such a high price. Merciless West sighed. He felt like his heart had died. The price of 6,800 was already a sky-high price for him, not to mention the price of 10,000. He looked at Merciless West. He could see the importance of the Nebula Ganoderma to Merciless West. 17,000 three-star primordial stones. Is there anyone who wants to bid higher? Such a terrifying price made the old man on the auction stage excited. He knew that the Nebula Ganoderma would fetch a good price today. Many people came for the Nebula Ganoderma, but he didn't expect it to reach such a high price. The voice fell into everyone's ears. Everyone's eyes fell on the Saint Mountain box, as if they wanted to know who was in the box. 17,000 three-star primordial stones, going once. 17,000 three-star primordial stones, going twice. The old man's voice was slow, and he looked at the box where Saint Mountain was from time to time. Perhaps Saint Mountain would continue to bid. 17,000 three-star primordial stones. Someone continued to bid. The voice was exceptionally clear in the auction hall, which was filled with anticipation. However, the person who bid wasn't from the box where Saint Mountain was, but from the box in the middle. It was obviously one of the best boxes in the auction hall. It was almost the same as Saint Mountain's box. Swish, swish. Everyone's eyes turned and looked over. They were filled with shock and curiosity. Chapter 749. Merciless West's eyes immediately locked on his Sui. The one who bid was this kid. 17,100. Merciless West stared at Sui, her eyes twitching. Where did this kid get such a high price from? From Merciless West's gaze, Sui knew that Merciless West was puzzled. He smiled and said in a low voice, I heard that the black card of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion allows you to buy things on credit. As long as you pay it back within a year, it's fine. I'm just not sure if it's possible to buy things on credit. Shi Wuqing's expression changed. Ripples appeared in his eyes, but he did not show it. However, his heart was trembling uncontrollably. How could Merciless West not know that Sui was bidding to get the Nebula Ganoderma for her? On the auction stage, the old man's gaze couldn't help but tremble. He had already received news that the person in the box was a mysterious black card VIP. 18,000 three-star origin stones. The clear voice from the box in the corner continued to bid. 18,103 star origin stones. Sui frowned and added another 100. Anyway, the lowest price he could raise was 100. 19,000 three-star origin stones. 19,103 star origin stones. 20,000 three-star origin stones. 20,103 star origin stones. Before the crowd could react, the price had already reached 20,100. PFFF, adding 100 each time. That guy is here to cause trouble. Amidst the oppressive atmosphere of the auction, some people couldn't help but laugh. No matter how high the price of the box in the corner was, the person in the middle box only added 100 each time. It was obvious that he wanted to cause trouble. Only the heavens knew that every time Sui bid, his heart was bleeding. Even though this was on credit, it was still unknown if the Lingbao Pavilion would be able to do so much on credit. Even if they could, they would have to pay back such a terrifying amount within a year. Thinking of this, Su Yi's heart was bleeding. The reason why he had to add 100 each time was because his heart was aching. The price of 20,00100 finally caused the voices in the private room in the corner to stop. I don't know why, but they didn't make any more bids. 20,103 star origin stones going once. 20,103 star essence stones going twice. 20,103 star essence stones going thrice sold. In the auction stage, the old man did not delay at all. In fact, he quickly made the final decision. Then, he looked at Su Yi's room and cast a smile at him. Merciless West couldn't help but tremble when the hammer struck. Her eyes flashed with joy as she looked at Su Yi. She nodded seriously and said, "Thank you. I'll find a way to repay this debt. We're brothers. We'll share blessings and hardships and repay debts together." Su Yi laughed. Even though there was a reason for them to become sworn brothers, after being together for so long, he had long regarded Merciless West as one of his own. This was his sworn brother. Is the nebula Ganoderma ours? Can I have a bite when the time comes? Little handsome Su was very excited. Saliva was flowing out of his mouth, and his small eyes were shining. Go away. Su Yi patted little handsome Su's head. Swoosh, swoosh. The nebula Ganoderma had been sold. In the auction house, there were many hidden auras that were attracted by it. Looks like we're in trouble. Even though those hidden auras were very hidden, Su Yi's sharp soul power caught them. He secretly focused and frowned slightly. How could Su Yi not understand these hidden auras? Treasures aroused the envy of others. He was afraid that as soon as he left Zhongzhou City, there would be people following him. For a treasure like the nebula Ganoderma, there would be many people eyeing it. Looks like there are indeed many people here for the nebula Ganoderma. Shiwuqing also felt it and said softly. At this moment, the number of people who were vaguely making a bid was even more than the number of people who were bidding just now. This proved that many people were here for the nebula Ganoderma, but they had no intention of bidding at all. Their purpose was self-evident. It's that kid from the Bawang sect. In the box of the Heavenly Xin sect, Lu Xiaohu's face was not ugly. He did not expect that kid to not only come to the VIP box, but also to be able to bid such a high price. This made Lu Xiaohu feel a sense of superiority in his heart. He did not know where it came from, but it was ruthlessly trampled on again. This made him even more resentful. That kid seems to be a little mysterious, Jian Wanyan said. His eyes were shining, and his face was cold. They had missed the nebula Ganoderma, but they could not compete for it. On the auction stage, the disciples of the Lingbao sect had already carried the nebula Ganoderma down. When the auction ended, the Lingbao sect would naturally arrange the transaction. Another auction item was placed on the auction stage. It was a defensive armor that was at the level of a primary spiritual weapon. The defensive armor was very rare and very practical. Its price was not low either. After a round of bidding, it was taken by one of the boxes on the top floor. However, after the bidding for the nebula Ganoderma, the price was no longer as shocking as before. Following that, there were several other extraordinary treasures that were auctioned at high prices. The atmosphere of the auction hall became lively again. Next up is the second last auction item of this auction. A second-level Origin Emperor Realm Soul Manipulation Talisman. The starting price is 100,000 2-star Origin Stones. Each bid is 1,200 2-star Origin Stones. The old man on the auction stage introduced the item on the auction stage. It was a palm-sized item that was suffused with radiance. There were runes flickering on it, releasing a dangerous aura fluctuation that made people's heart palpitate with a glance. It's actually this thing. It really exists. So he was moved. During these 2 days in the Yuqian Palace, he had read a lot of information related to the Soul Manipulation Master. This was a method of the soul manipulation master. The soul manipulation talisman was able to draw out the remnant soul and seal it into a restriction. Once the soul manipulation talisman was used, it could burst out with terrifying power. The power of the soul manipulation talisman was based on the condensed strength of the soul manipulation master. The stronger the soul manipulation talisman condensed by the soul manipulation master, the stronger the power. It was also related to the soul manipulation master's soul spirit power and other factors. The soul manipulation talisman was an offensive method. Su-yi also understood that there was another method of the soul manipulation master called the soul manipulation talisman shield. It was similar to the soul manipulation talisman shield. It was just that the soul manipulation talisman was an offensive method. The soul manipulation talisman shield was a defensive method. The soul manipulation talisman shield was much easier to make. It only had defensive power and was hard to use as an offensive method. Normally speaking, these soul manipulation talisman shields and soul manipulation talisman shields were not very useful to true experts. However, to the juniors of the major sects, the soul manipulation talisman shields and soul manipulation talisman shields were extremely useful. Chapter 750. However, no matter if it was the soul manipulation killing talisman or the soul control talisman shield, it required an enormous amount of effort and time to refine. Ef more YV new W most you quick queue up to the proud and arrogant soul manipulators. They would normally disdain to refine these things. Therefore, these soul manipulation killing talismans and soul control talisman shields were not commonly seen, and their prices were extremely high. However, one had to admit that these soul manipulation killing talismans and soul control talisman shields had many wonderful uses. Instantly, there were many people bidding. Even the VIP rooms on the top floor had bids. Su-yi was slightly tempted. He had to admit that this soul manipulation killing talisman had wonderful uses. Once a second-level Origin Monarch stage soul manipulation killing talisman was activated, it was equivalent to a second-level Origin Monarch stage expert's attack. An Origin Void stage expert would be killed in one strike. If he had this soul manipulation killing talisman, Su-yi reckoned that if he encountered danger, he would be able to increase his strength explosively. Su-yi bid, but it was quickly increased by others. In the end, the soul manipulation killing talisman was actually bid at a high price of 230,000 two-star Origin stones and was purchased by the St. Mountain's VIP room. This price was also very high, causing Su-yi to exclaim in admiration. Although this soul manipulation killing talisman's price of 230,000 two-star Origin stones was extremely high, it was able to directly kill a 9th-level Origin Void stage expert. Thinking about it, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The price of 230,000 two-star Origin stones was bid by the St. Mountain. Everyone in the VIP rooms on the top floor seemed to know that it was someone from the St. Mountain, so no one bid a higher price. Su-yi didn't increase the price. It wasn't that he wasn't tempted, but it was purely because he was slightly pained. He already owed a huge debt and didn't dare to owe any more. The auction hall silently quieted down. After the auction of the soul manipulation killing talisman ended, the atmosphere of the entire auction hall became silent for no reason. Many gazes had already descended onto the auction stage in advance. They were burning with anticipation as they waited. Su-yi also felt this tense atmosphere. The last item to be auctioned should be the rumored precious treasure. Many people came today for the Nebula Ganoderma, but there were definitely more people who came for this precious treasure. Su-yi was also very curious. He didn't know what kind of treasure would be auctioned at the end of an auction of this scale. Under everyone's concerned gazes, a disciple from the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion walked up onto the auction stage. He was obviously very careful. There were so many powerful and obscure auras in the auction hall. Even though the disciple had a high cultivation base, he still couldn't help but tremble inwardly. He gently placed an ancient wooden chest the size of a baby onto the auction stage. The ancient wooden chest was mottled, as if it had been buried underground for many years before being dug up. It was mottled and yellowed, and its surface was covered with mysterious patterns. There was no aura fluctuation. What's that? Many concealed auras were carefully sizing up the wooden chest. However, many people were also puzzled. This wooden chest didn't seem to have anything special about it. Would it really be the final item of today's auction? Although he had some doubts in his heart, after secretly observing it, the wooden chest didn't seem to have anything special about it. It also didn't have any special aura fluctuation. However, he felt that many concealed gazes from all around had landed on the wooden chest. Sui guessed that this wooden chest definitely had some background. Otherwise, the dignified spiritual treasure pavilion wouldn't have placed it as the final item of the auction. Ladies and gentlemen, this item is very mysterious. It was obtained from a secret danger zone. Many experts of the spiritual treasure pavilion had investigated it, but they couldn't open it. There was a seal placed on it that couldn't be broken. If it was forcefully opened, I'm afraid that the item inside would be destroyed. Under everyone's gaze, the old man on the auction stage slowly opened his mouth. He looked around and continued. According to the experts of the spiritual treasure pavilion, this item has been buried for at least 5,000 years. The seal on it is still so strong. It shows that the person who placed the seal on it is definitely an unimaginable expert. It is very likely that there is a great treasure inside. Moreover, the experts of the spiritual treasure pavilion found a special pattern on it. In the end, they confirmed that this pattern is related to the demon-subduing sect of Yuzhou. There are some small differences between this pattern and the badge of the demon-subduing sect. It is very likely that this item is related to the death of a top expert of the demon-subduing sect 8,000 years ago. 8,000 years ago, that top expert of the demon-subduing sect happened to go to that secret danger zone and never appeared again. The demon-subduing sect of Yuzhou. As the old man's voice faded, the eyes of the people around the auction house were already boiling. The demon-subduing sect of Yuzhou, a top expert from 8,000 years ago. It was very likely that this was his legacy. These keywords were enough to make everyone present unable to resist the temptation. The demon-subduing sect of Yuzhou was one of the top 10 forces in the 6 continents, 3 continents, and 1 sea. It was as famous as the sacred mountain of the central continent. Left behind by a top expert from Yuzhou 8,000 years ago, with such a seal placed on it, it was enough to show how important it was. Even if it wasn't left behind for his entire life, there must be a great treasure inside. Ladies and gentlemen, no one knows what is inside this item, but its value is self-evident. Therefore, the starting price is 100,000 3-star primordial stones. One bid is 1,000 3-star primordial stones. The old man said. No one knew what was inside the ancient wooden box on the auction stage, but it was enough to judge that it was not an ordinary item. Left behind by a top expert from the demon-subduing sect of Yuzhou 8,000 years ago, it was enough to prove its value. 100,000 3-star primordial stones. When such a price was announced, many people in the auction house sucked in a breath of cold air. Su Yi's eyes trembled violently. The starting price of the Nebula Ganoderma was only 3,000 3-star primordial stones. This mysterious wooden box that he didn't know anything about could be opened, and he didn't even know if there was anything inside. Yet, the starting price was 100,000 3-star primordial stones. Among them, the words demon-subduing sect were the reason. The entire auction house was filled with burning gazes, but there was also a deathly silence. It was so quiet that the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. 100,000 3-star primordial stones. How many people in the auction house could afford such a price? In the VIP box on the top floor, there was also silence. There were people with burning gazes, but no one made a bid. 100,000 3-star primordial stones. After a long period of silence, a bid finally came from the box where the holy mountain was located. In an instant, many people's gazes swept over. Many of their eyes flickered with complicated emotions. No one continued to bid, and everyone waited in silence. 100,000 3-star primordial stones, going once. Are there any more bids? 100,000 3-star primordial stones, going twice. The old man on the auction stage spoke. His speed was much faster than before. It was as if he was very clear that in the auction house, only the Holy Mountain would be able to bid this price. 101,000 3-star primordial stones. So he made his bid, a faint smile on his face. Chapter 751. Swish, swish. Numerous gazes were cast over from all directions. Many concealed auras fluctuated, as if they didn't expect that there would be someone competing with the sacred mountain, and that it would be someone from the private room. Don't worry, I'm just raising the price. I have no intention of taking it. Seeing Merciless West's astonished gaze, Sue-Yi shook his head. Since the sacred mountain wanted it, then he might as well raise the price. In any case, he had no intention of taking the wooden chest. As long as he was in a good mood, it would be fine as long as the sacred mountain bleed more. 101,000 3-star source stones going once. 101,000 3-star source stones going twice. 101,000 3-star source stones going thrice. Soon, the old man on the auction stage made the final call. The sacred mountain's private room had no intention of bidding. Percent, 3 inch what's going on? When the hammer fell, Sue-Yi was completely stupefied. His eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. What Yojo's demon subduing sect? What 8,000 years old treasure? What lifetime legacy? What mysterious wooden chest? Only the heavens knew that Sue-Yi didn't even think about it. He had the supreme art of origin, the mysterious space, the saint artifact heavenly star shock soul, the Tian Yao School's headmaster, and the heavenly demon's ancient scripture. Although the demon subduing sect was a behemoth like the sacred mountain, and the treasure left behind by its expert was definitely extraordinary, Sue-Yi really didn't have much interest in it. Not to mention, the Spirit Treasure Pavilion's people couldn't open the wooden chest, and he had spent 101,000 3-star source stones, which was equivalent to 1 billion 1-star source stones. Thinking of this, Sue-Yi almost collapsed. He had no intention of taking the wooden chest. He only wanted to raise the price to cheat the sacred mountain. Who knew that the sacred mountain actually didn't increase the price? After the hammer fell, Sue-Yi couldn't help but look at Merciless West. His eyes were misty. The old man on the auction stage was still saying something, but Sue-Yi wasn't in the mood to listen. Looking at Sue-Yi, Merciless West's expression was very solemn. The auction had already ended, and some people had already made their stand. Spirit Treasure Pavilion's disciples were arranging everything in an orderly manner. "Sir, Elder Chin invites you in." A voice came from outside the box. It was the thin, middle-aged man. Sue-Yi sighed. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but then he thought about it. 1 billion 3-star origin stones. How could his black card be able to buy so much on credit? The Spirit Treasures Pavilion wouldn't be so greedy. If that was the case, then he probably wouldn't have to bear the debt, and the auction would be a failure. Thinking of this, Sue-Yi's mood instantly improved. He got up and left the room with Merciless West. Swish, swish. As soon as he left the room, Sue-Yi felt many obscure auras land on his body. Sue-Yi glanced around and saw many familiar figures. Next to him was Elder Eyespot from the Holy Mountain, Wang Chuanda, and several other young disciples. Several unfriendly gazes were directed at him. "It's that brat." Wang Chuanda's expression suddenly turned cold. He was wondering who had snatched the Nebula Ganoderma and the wooden box that the Holy Mountain was determined to get. He didn't expect it to be that brat from the Bawang sect. Eyespot and the others were also unhappy, their eyes cold. This time, he came personally to get the Nebula Ganoderma and the wooden box from the demon's subduing sect. He thought that he would definitely get it, but he didn't expect that it would be snatched by the next door. Even more unexpected, it was that brat from the Bawang sect. "I'm afraid we're in big trouble now." Merciless West sighed and transmitted her voice to Sue-Yi. Different situations call for different actions. Sue-Yi said softly. He didn't care about the Holy Mountain's unfriendliness. After all, he already had a deep grudge with the Holy Mountain. The Nebula Ganoderma and the wooden box were both taken by him. Looking at the unfriendly gazes of the holy mountain, Su-yi suddenly felt refreshed. Following the thin middle-aged man, Su-yi and Merciless West left. On the other hand, Merciless West's face was frowning and dignified. "Brat, let's see how you're going to die this time. Do you think it's easy to be in the limelight?" In a nearby room, Lu Xiaohu's eyes were filled with coldness as he watched Su-yi walk past the door. That brat didn't know what was good for him. He actually dared to snatch the nebula Ganoderma that the holy mountain was determined to get. The wooden box was obviously a hot potato, but he still dared to snatch it. After a while, in the small hall of the Lingbao Pavilion, Qin San was already waiting. "Congratulations, Lord. You've obtained the nebula Ganoderma and the items left behind by the experts of the demon-subduing sect." When he saw Su-yi, Qin San immediately came up to greet him. His eyes carried a smile, and he was very amiable. Su-yi looked around. This time, there was only Qin San. He immediately bowed and said to Qin San with a smile, "Elder Qin, to be honest, I don't have any primordial stones on me. I'm afraid that the black card won't be able to buy so many primordial stones, right? Lord, just call me Qin San or shopkeeper. Don't joke around. Those who have the black card of the Lingbao Pavilion are the most precious guests of the Lingbao Pavilion. These primordial stones are naturally not a problem. When the time comes, just remember to send them to any branch of the Lingbao Pavilion within a year. The items that you've obtained are already prepared in this space bag for you." As soon as he finished speaking, a space bag appeared in Qin San's hand. He poured out 2 items. They were the nebula Ganoderma and the mysterious wooden box. Along with the appearance of the nebula Ganoderma, the entire hall suddenly shone brightly. Starlight flickered, and a medicinal fragrance spread out through the jade box. The wooden box was mottled and old. It was yellowish and didn't have any aura fluctuations. Except for some mysterious patterns on the surface, it was no different from an ordinary wooden box. There is a seal on the wooden box. You can't open it by force. Otherwise, you'll break the items inside. There is also a seal on the jade box to prevent the nebula Ganoderma from escaping. This item is similar to the blood jasper spirit ginseng. It's extremely good at hiding and escaping. When you open it, you must be careful. The experts of the Lingbao Pavilion have also placed a special method on this jade box. It can be stored in a space bag. It's much easier for you to use it, Qin San said, hinting Su-yi to inspect the 2 items. Su-yi looked at the nebula Ganoderma and the mysterious wooden box from a close distance. The nebula Ganoderma was sealed by the jade box. Su-yi didn't care about it. At this moment, Su-yi was more concerned about the mysterious wooden box. The mysterious wooden box was worth 1 billion one-star primordial stones. Hearing Qin San's words, Su-yi was about to collapse. This black card could actually allow one to borrow so much money. After roughly inspecting the wooden box, Su-yi found that there was indeed a seal placed on it. It seemed like it was really difficult to open. 1 billion one-star primordial stones to buy a wooden box that couldn't be opened. Su-yi's heart was bleeding. Even if it really was the inheritance of the experts of the demon-subduing sect in Su-yi's heart, it definitely wasn't worth this price. "Brother, take a look." Su-yi handed the wooden box to Merciless West. Such an expensive wooden box should at least be carefully inspected. Chapter 752. Su-yi nodded. Since Merciless West had inspected it, it meant that the wooden box was indeed an antique and the seal was real. "Elder Qin, do you think it's okay if I don't want this wooden box?" Su-yi asked Qin San with a smile. If he didn't want this wooden box, he wouldn't have to bear such a huge debt. Anyway, this wooden box was useless to him. At the very least, he couldn't even open it now. It was no different from a piece of scrap wood. My lord is joking again. There might be a great treasure inside. It might even be the lifetime inheritance of an expert from the demon-subduing sect. Even the sacred mountain wants to take it for themselves. Congratulations to my lord for obtaining it. Qin San smiled apologetically and handed the spatial pouch over to Su-yi. It was obvious that this auction item couldn't be rejected. Su-yi sighed helplessly and kept the wooden box. It wasn't convenient to hold the nebula Ganoderma in his hand. The jade box was sealed with a seal and could be kept in the spatial pouch. My lord, there's another item. This is a gift from my spirit treasure pavilion. Qin Sen handed over a palm-sized item to Sui. It was emitting rays of light and flickering runes, releasing a dangerous aura. Sui's eyes flickered. The item was yellowish and emitted a heavy, dangerous aura. It made one's heart palpitate with just a glance. This is the soul manipulation killing talisman. Sui was moved. It was the same as the soul manipulation killing talisman in the auction. It was actually a soul manipulation killing talisman. Judging from its aura, it wouldn't be any weaker than the soul manipulation killing talisman in the auction. The soul manipulation killing talisman was a restriction that drew the remnant's soul to seal it. Once the user used it, it would burst out with terrifying power. The more powerful the soul manipulation talisman was, the more powerful the soul manipulation talisman would be. This was also related to the soul manipulation talisman's soul strength and other factors. My lord, this isn't a soul manipulation killing talisman. This is a soul manipulation talisman shield, a 5th level Origin Emperor Realm soul manipulation talisman shield. Thank you for your support for the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion's auction. Therefore, this soul manipulation talisman shield is a gift from the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion to you. It's just a small item, but it's a token of our appreciation, said Qin San to Sui. So, it's a soul control rune shield. Sui felt a little embarrassed. As a soul controller, he hadn't been able to immediately identify the soul controller killing talisman and the soul controller talisman shield. However, he did know that the soul controller talisman shield was a technique of a soul controller. It was similar to the soul controller killing talisman. The soul controlling talisman was an offensive talisman. However, the soul control talisman shield was a defensive type. Although the soul mastery rune shield was much easier to make, it only had defensive power and was difficult to use as an offensive power. However, it was able to withstand powerful attacks and was a top-quality defensive item. Thank you very much. How could Sui be courteous? He immediately kept the soul mastery talisman shield. It would be a waste not to take it. How could he dislike it? Previously, the soul mastery killing talisman had been auctioned off at an exorbitant price. Now that he had such a huge debt, Sui felt that it was only right for him to take the soul mastery killing talisman. My lord, do you have any other requests? Do you still want to take a stroll around the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion? Qin San asked Sui enthusiastically. Forget it. Sui shook his head without hesitation. He already had a huge debt. If he were to take a stroll around, he might not be able to control himself. There must be a lot of treasures in the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion. He couldn't afford to be in debt anymore. There was a special passage in the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion. After a while, Sui and Merciless West came out of the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion. As soon as they came out of the Spiritual Treasure Pavilion, there was an obscure aura that was hard to detect. Not good. It's a bit troublesome. Merciless West felt it. Her face was slightly serious from the beginning. At this moment, she frowned and her expression became more serious. Sui carefully sensed. Under the heavenly origin demonic soul, his sharp soul power could faintly detect some auras. It seems that they've been waiting for us. Sui raised his eyebrows. Ever since they came out of the auction, they had been stared at by these obscure auras. He could feel that these obscure auras were exactly the same as those in the auction. Sui naturally knew what was going on. The Nebula Ganoderma and the final wooden chest had both landed in his hands. He was afraid that he had already become the target of many experts. It should be fine in the Central Continent City. Everyone would be afraid of him. However, if he were to leave the Central Continent City, the consequences would be obvious. Little brother, Sui. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared with a smile. It was Vice Palace Master Guanlan. Behind him were several experts and young disciples of the Yuqian Palace. Senior Guanlan. Sui bowed. Naturally, Sui did not think it was a coincidence that he met Guanlan here. Just now, in the VIP box on the top floor of the auction, the people from Yuqian Palace were also there. They must have seen him and knew that he had won the final wooden box and Nebula Ganoderma. Now that Guanlan was here, he must have come to protect him. Little brother Su-yi, are you going back to the Yuqian Palace now? Guanlan nodded to Shi Wuqing and asked Su-yi. There was some shock in his eyes. Su-yi was able to sit in the VIP box. The Lingbao Pavilion's attitude was very unusual. Chapter 753. Qin Sin looked troubled. Even with his eyesight, he couldn't see through the young man named Isu. The black card was issued by that individual, so I fear that it has quite a deep relationship with that individual. In that case, there is no need for us to worry about anything else. However, once we leave Central Continent City, I fear that when the time comes, it will be quite lively. The middle-aged man said, quite a few old people have come. Right now, I reckon that they have already set their eyes on that Isu. Once he leaves Central Continent City, I reckon that there will be people who will no longer endure. At that time, we'll have to see what kind of background this Isu has. Don't forget that the Sacred Martial Assembly is tomorrow. This Isu will also participate. The middle-aged man said, yes, he should be participating. He already fought with the first-level Yuan Jun realm, Ouyang Jinwei from Saint Mountain, and defeated her in one move. Qin San said with a hint of shock in his eyes. Ouyang Jinwei seems to have some of the holy ruler's qi on her. She only used one move. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He paused for a moment before continuing. He defeated Ouyang Jinwei in one move and raised the price with Saint Mountain. It seems that he has a grudge with Saint Mountain. I guess this Isu has completely offended Saint Mountain. Qin San said, the soul-taming shield has been given to him. It's just a show of sincerity. The trouble will depend on him. When the time comes, we might be able to find out his true identity. The young man said softly. It was already dusk for the auction. Zhongzhou City's Yuqian Palace. The sunset covered half of the sky like a sea of fire. In the main hall of Yuqian Palace, Su-yi, Merciless West, Green Emperor, Su Shuai, Old Man Gue, Guanlan, Yin Lu, and Yun Ding, the three vice-palace masters gathered together. In the main hall, Su Yi's mysterious wooden box was placed on the stone table in the middle of the hall. Old Man Gue, Guanlan, Yun Ding, and Yin Lu, the three vice-palace masters, inspected the items with solemn expressions. After a good while, Old Man Gue and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. They said to Su-yi, this thing has indeed been here for a long time, but the seal on it is very complicated. It can still be so strong after such a long time, and it is difficult to open it by force. This old man is truly ashamed. It seems that we can only open it by going to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace. If little brother has time, after the Sacred Martial Assembly, you can go to the headquarters of the Heavenly Command Palace and see what is inside this wooden box. You can also thoroughly examine the quality of little brother's soul. Thank you, Palace Lord Gue. We'll see when the time comes. Su-yi nodded. He originally wanted to see if the few palace lords of command Heavenly Palace could open this mysterious wooden chest, but no one knew. What a mysterious wooden chest. Do you want me to burn it? Walking around the mysterious wooden box, Su Xiaoshui was also very curious. You'd better behave. Su-yi immediately warned Su Xiaoshui. After all, this was an item bought at a high price. No matter what, he couldn't let Su Xiaoshui destroy it. Tomorrow is the Sacred Martial Assembly. Little brother, you better be prepared. I heard that there are many talented young people in this Sacred Martial Assembly. Although little brother's strength is extraordinary, you can't be careless. Old Man Gue said to Su-yi, thank you, Palace Lord Gue. Su-yi nodded. Tomorrow was the Sacred Martial Assembly, which was why he came to the Central State City. The Sacred Martial Assembly was his real goal this time. Returning to the courtyard, Su-yi, Green Emperor, and Merciless West were still there. And look at Section XS of Chapter XM of PU this time. I'm afraid I've really gotten into trouble. Closing the door, Merciless West's expression became serious. She frowned and said to Su, this mysterious wooden chest is a hot potato. What do you mean? Su-yi asked. Although he knew that this mysterious wooden chest was being eyed by many people, it was indeed a big problem. Can't you see that the sacred mountain didn't bid again? Other than the sacred mountain, I'm afraid no one else would dare to bid. Even the sacred mountain doesn't particularly want to take over this hot potato. Merciless West looked at Sue-Yi and said, "This matter concerns the demon-subduing sect of the Yuzhou. It said that this wooden chest was left behind by an expert from the Yuzhou 8,000 years ago. If the demon-subduing sect gets the news, they'll chase the person to the ends of the world to retrieve this item. Even if the sacred mountain obtains it, the demon-subduing sect will think of a way to get it. This wooden chest appeared in the central state, and only the sacred mountain has the qualifications to obtain it. But if the sacred mountain really obtains it, they won't have a good time facing the demon-subduing sect. If they hand over the wooden chest, the sacred mountain's reputation will be damaged. But if they don't hand it over, the sacred mountain will definitely have a grudge with the demon-subduing sect. It's a dilemma. If that's the case, I've really blocked a problem for the sacred mountain." Hearing this, Sue-Yi frowned. Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. No wonder the sacred mountain didn't bid again. Of course, but the sacred mountain won't thank you. Merciless West smiled faintly and rolled her eyes at Sue-Yi. She said, "You've thoroughly offended the sacred mountain this time. The wooden chest was snatched by you. Although it's the sacred mountain's wish, but you snatched it openly. This will damage the sacred mountain's reputation. Previously, you also snatched the nebula Ganoderma, and with Ouyang Jinwei's matter, I'm afraid the sacred mountain won't be polite to you anymore. Moreover, do you really think the sacred mountain doesn't want this wooden chest? It's left behind by an expert of the demon-subduing sect. The sacred mountain's interest won't be lower than anyone else's. Bring it on then." Sue-Yi's eyes were cold. He really wasn't afraid of offending the sacred mountain. Anyway, the hatred between them was as deep as the sea. After the sacred martial assembly, he wouldn't stay in Zhongzhou City. Do you think there's only the sacred mountain now? In this auction, you don't know how many people have their eyes on you. I'm afraid this time, it'll be difficult for us to leave Zhongzhou City. Zhongzhou City is the territory of the sacred mountain. After the sacred martial assembly, we'll be in a dilemma. Merciless West's face was solemn. The nebula Ganoderma and the ancient wooden chest were enough to arouse the greed of all the experts. In the auction, there were many experts hiding. Their purpose was self-evident. It was fine during the sacred martial assembly, but after the sacred martial assembly, the consequences could be imagined. This is really troublesome. Listening to Merciless West's words, Sue-Yi's eyes also became solemn. He hadn't thought enough. It seemed like this matter was more troublesome than he had imagined. Huff! After a moment, Sue-Yi shook his head and squeezed out a smile on his face. He said to Merciless West, "We'll deal with whatever comes our way. Let's participate in tomorrow's Sacred Martial Assembly first. In tomorrow's Sacred Martial Assembly, you must be on guard, especially the people of the Sacred Mountain. The Sacred Mountain is determined to get the wooden chest. They might take action against you in the Sacred Martial Assembly." Chapter 754. Sue-Yi understood Merciless West's words. The ancient wooden chest and the nebula Ganoderma. Everyone in Zhongzhou City knew that they were in his possession. Currently, he was still safe in Zhongzhou City, but after the Sacred Martial Assembly, that might not necessarily be the case. Many experts must have been secretly watching him, and the Sacred Mountain was no exception. Tomorrow is the Sacred Martial Assembly. Prepare well. We will talk about it after the Sacred Martial Assembly. Be wary of the Sacred Mountain's people during the Sacred Martial Assembly. Merciless West said, tomorrow was the Sacred Martial Assembly, so everything would have to wait until after the Sacred Martial Assembly. Of course, the local Sacred Mountain would have to make a move during the Sacred Martial Assembly. Making a move during the Sacred Martial Assembly? I am really looking forward to it. Sue-Yi's eyes were filled with expectation. If they really made a move during the Sacred Martial Assembly, he was not afraid. The Sacred Martial Assembly was only for the younger generation. Sue-Yi was not afraid of the Sacred Mountain's younger generation. If the Sacred Mountain wanted to make a move during the Sacred Martial Assembly, then Su-yi would definitely not be polite. During the Sacred Martial Assembly, we are not afraid of the Sacred Mountain making a move openly, but we are afraid of the Sacred Mountain's underhanded methods. Those so-called big sects look dignified, but in the dark, each and every one of them is insidious and shameless. Merciless West reminded Su-yi that those big sects were not as upright as they looked on the surface. Su-yi agreed with Merciless West's words without reservation. Su-yi had personally experienced the shamelessness and insidiousness of the Sacred Mountain. During the Sacred Martial Assembly, everyone is watching. Even if the Sacred Mountain wants to be insidious and shameless, they will have some scruples. Su-yi said, during the Sacred Martial Assembly, everyone was watching. Presumably, the Sacred Mountain's people would have some scruples if they wanted to do anything. Merciless West looked at Su-yi, slightly raised her eyebrows, and said, "You probably don't know the whole process of the Sacred Martial Assembly." Su-yi was surprised. He shook his head at Merciless West, smiled embarrassedly, and said, I really don't know. The Sacred Martial Arts Assembly will last for 2 days. It is divided into 2 parts. First, you have to enter the Sacred Martial Secret World. Within 1 day and 1 night, you have to break out of the Sacred Martial Secret World. Only the first 32 people to break out of the Sacred Martial Secret World will be qualified to participate in the real battle on the 2nd day. But in the Sacred Martial Secret World, no one is monitoring it, and this is the territory of the Sacred Mountain and the 5 sects and 3 factions. If the Sacred Mountain does something, no one can say for sure, and no one will know. Shi Wuqing told Su-yi the procedure of the Sacred Martial Arts Conference. No one in the Sacred Martial Secret World could monitor it. If a martial inside, was martial secret. Then, Shi Wuqing continued to tell Su-yi that the Sacred Martial Secret World was located outside the Central Continent City. It was similar to the Mysterious Gates illusory spirit world. It was a powerful method set up by the Soul Controller Master to test the true strength of the young generation participating in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Only the first 32 people to break through the Sacred Martial Secret World could participate in the final battle. That was the real Sacred Martial Assembly. The last 32 people were the real peak of the younger generation in Zhongzhou City. In the Sacred Martial Secret World, if the people of the Sacred Mountain wanted to do anything, it would be impossible to guard against. Can anyone enter the Sacred Martial Secret World? Su-yi asked. No, only the younger generation can participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Merciless West said, Then I'm really looking forward to it. You better not provoke me. Otherwise, I don't mind collecting some interest. Su-yi's eyes were cold. Since only the younger generation could participate in the Sacred Martial Secret World, there was no need to worry too much. Su-yi was not afraid of the younger generation. If the Sacred Mountain wanted to use some insidious means, Su-yi would not mind making the Sacred Mountain pay a price first. In short, be careful. Merciless West reminded Su-yi. Thinking that Su-yi was not someone to be trifled with, she was relieved. It would not be easy for the younger generation to deal with this kid. Don't worry. Su-yi nodded and hesitated for a moment. Then, he said to Merciless West, the Nebula Ganoderma must be used urgently. If not, I will put in my space. Maybe the Nebula Ganoderma's effect will be stronger. It's not urgent. It's better to put it in your space. Merciless West did not hesitate. She knew the wonders of Su-yi's space. In that space, the blood jade spirit ginseng was obviously much stronger. Okay, Su-yi nodded. When the time came, the Nebula Ganoderma would not be able to escape from the mysterious space. Of course, our bet will not change. In the Sacred Martial Assembly, if you enter the top 2, I will join your Bewong sect. Merciless West said with a smile. Wait for it. Su-yi smiled, and fighting spirit surged in his eyes. He was still young after all. Tomorrow was a grand occasion for the younger generation in Zhongzhou, and he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. Fighting spirit surged in his eyes. This would be the first time he truly tested himself since he left the barbarian city. Rest early. Merciless West then left and let Su Yi have a good rest. Tomorrow was the sacred martial assembly. This was a grand event for the entire Central State. Merciless West was also looking forward to it. How far could this kid go in this sacred martial assembly? A moment later, in the room, the moonlight shone through the window and sprinkled on Su Yi's body. It was as if he was covered in a layer of hazy, divine splendor. On the bed, Su Yi sat cross-legged. He picked up the mysterious wooden box and looked at it. The wooden box was modeled and ancient. It did not have any aura fluctuations. However, no matter what Su Yi did, he could not open it. When he injected his yuan qi, a light flashed. The wooden box suddenly weighed more than 10,000 jin. What a powerful seal. It is still so powerful after thousands of years. Su Yi was astonished. This ancient wooden chest was at least a few thousand years old, and the seals on it were still so strong. It was obvious how strong it was. However, it couldn't be opened. This wooden chest was no different from a piece of scrapwood. Moreover, even if it was the inheritance of the demon's subduing sect, Su Yi would not be interested in it. Putting away the wooden box, Su Yi's mind was in a mess. Many things had happened in the past few days in Central State City. He had met the people from the Sacred Mountain again. He had inadvertently caused a lot of trouble at the auction. Su Yi knew in his heart that after the Sacred Martial Assembly, there would be a lot of trouble coming. What are you thinking about? Su Xiaoshui was lying beside Su Yi. He raised his little head and looked at Su Yi quietly. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I'm not thinking about anything. Su Yi stretched and patted Su Xiaoshui's little head. Can I participate in the mysterious Sacred Martial Assembly tomorrow? It seems interesting. Chapter 755. You can't. Su Yi smiled and shook his head. He said to Su Xiaoshui, you should cultivate well. When you become a true sovereign of the demon clan, we won't be like this anymore. Believe me, I will become strong soon. When the time comes, I will beat up anyone who bullies my boss. Su Xiaoshui flapped his wings as if he was waving his fists. His eyes were serious, and his small appearance made people want to laugh. Okay, I'll wait for that day. Su Yi smiled and felt warmth in his heart. Under the invisible connection, he and Su Xiaoshui had a feeling of being connected by blood, as if they were brothers. Immediately, Su Yi sat down cross-legged and operated the Origin Supreme Art. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. Su Yi was not afraid of anyone in the younger generation. However, Su Yi was not a careless person for tomorrow's Sacred Martial Assembly. He had to be in peak condition at all times. Zhongzhou City could be said to be a city that never sleeps. Even in the middle of the night, it was still brightly lit and bustling. The streets and alleys were filled with people. Tomorrow was the day when the Sacred Martial Assembly would officially begin. Everyone was concerned. Some of the major forces and clans were even more concerned. This was a great opportunity for the younger generation of their sects and clans to stand out. Once the younger generation stood out and made a name for themselves in the Sacred Martial Assembly, it would affect the fortune of the entire sect and clan. If they missed this opportunity, they would have to wait for another 30 years. The Sacred Martial Assembly was held once every 30 years. In order to nurture the younger generation, the major clans and sects had spent a lot of effort and resources. They could not afford to waste too much time. Night, in the City Lord's mansion. In the room, Elder Bing Chao, Wang Chuanda, Quang Guilon, Ouyang Yuanfeng, and several other elders and protectors of the Sacred Mountain were gathered. Their faces looked calm, but there was a hint of gloominess hidden within. Although the nebula Ganoderma is rare, it is not impossible for our Sacred Mountain to find it. Even stronger ones are not a problem. However, the item in the wooden box of the demon's subduing sect is of great use to our Sacred Mountain. We must obtain it. Elder Bing Chao said. His body was faintly moving with cold qi. This time, Bing Cauldron was truly enraged. Time and time again, he had suffered because of that brat, but he couldn't do anything about it. How could he not be angry? That brat has been going against our Sacred Mountain at every turn. He must not be allowed to live. Kwang Guilin spoke, her eyes filled with murderous intent. She looked at Elder Bing Chao and said, "Tomorrow in the sacred martial secret world, it will be the best opportunity to kill that brat. The sacred martial secret world is our territory. As long as we do something, that brat will be doomed." Wang Chuanda said, if he used some tricks in the sacred martial secret world, it was enough to make that brat unknowingly die without even knowing how he died. Don't forget that there are still 5 sects and 3 factions in the sacred martial secret world. If we really do something, it will inevitably alarm the 5 sects and 3 factions. When that time comes, who would dare to participate in the sacred martial assembly in the future? None of US can bear this responsibility. The entire sacred mountain can't bear this responsibility. What's more, if we want to do something in the sacred martial secret world, it's not something we can do. Elder Bing Chao said in a low voice. Then what should we do? With that brat's strength, it shouldn't be difficult for him to enter the top 32. At that time, it will be even more difficult to make a move. I'm also afraid that something will happen to the wooden box and the nebula Ganoderma from the demon subduing sect. What's more, that brat seems to have a group of people from the Imperial Palace behind him. Kwang Guilin said. She was worried that tomorrow in the sacred martial secret world would be the best time to make a move. Elders, I have an idea. There's no need for the sacred martial secret world to do anything. We can definitely make it difficult for that brat to escape. Wang Chuanda said in a low voice with a sinister smile. Then he whispered something to everyone. Okay, then let that brat stop in the sacred martial secret world forever. I just hope that the wooden box and the nebula Ganoderma from the demon subduing sect are with him. At that time, it will be less troublesome. Then, Elder Bing Chao sneered. That brat is dead this time. He can't escape. Kwang Guilin's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The next day, when the sky was slightly bright, it was a beautiful and boundless moment. Above Zhongzhou City, there were still a few broken stars in the deep white sky. Under the boundless sky, Zhongzhou City's surroundings were reflected in the bronze sky. A ray of dawn light gradually appeared. Perhaps it was because of the sacred martial assembly, but today's light was a bright red that had never been seen before. Early in the morning, Zhongzhou City was bustling with noise. Crowds of people rushed out of the city because the sacred martial secret world was in the mountains outside the city. Huff, huff. Outside Zhongzhou City, as soon as the darkness before dawn passed, waves of aura awakened from the mountains. Countless people had been waiting outside the city. That was the place where the sacred martial secret world opened. Young people crowded around it. They had been waiting for a long time, waiting to enter the sacred martial secret world today. There were even more spectators, waiting for the sacred martial assembly, the grandest event in Zhongzhou, to begin. When the time came, all the geniuses would advance together. What a shocking scene it would be. If they could witness it with their own eyes, they would be able to brag about it for the rest of their lives. Early in the morning, all the gates of Zhongzhou City were opened. Crowds of people rushed out of the city, heading in the direction of the sacred martial secret world. It was a mighty and shocking scene. Huff! In the room, Su exhaled a mouthful of turbid air from his stomach. His slightly closed eyes opened. There was a red light flickering in his eyes. His face was rosy, and he was in high spirits. Huff! Not far from the bed, Su Xiaoshui flapped his little wings. His body was shining brightly. He exhaled a mouthful of hot turbid air. There seemed to be a divine light fluctuating in his small eyes, which was then restrained. In Zhongzhou City, the sun rose from the east. In an instant, a fireball soared into the sky. From the rosy clouds, thousands of colorful light pillars shot down. Illo, illo, illo. Suddenly, above the void of Zhongzhou City, a shocking roar came. It was like a sudden clap of thunder. A terrifying demonic aura swept across, causing people to tremble and go limp. 3 huge shadows were cast in the city. Their auras were terrifying. They were 3 huge dragons. Their bodies were black and shining. Their scales were dense, and their eyes were as red as blood. They were emitting a terrifying aura. Each of them had a cultivation of the demonic illusionary realm. The three ancient black-scaled demonic dragons were pulling a huge warship. Many people were sitting on it, and their auras were extremely powerful. Roar, roar. The tiger roars were like thunder. The eyes of two huge, flying tigers were filled with golden light. They had wings on their backs. They spread their wings and soared into the sky. It was as if two dark clouds were cast on the ground. Their auras were ferocious and terrifying. They were two golden-eyed flying tigers. They were also pulling a huge war chariot. They crossed the sky. Many figures were faintly discernible in the clouds. Chapter 756. Coo. A spiritual bird's cry pierced through the clouds and split rocks as it flapped its wings in the air. Its entire body was green and white, and its posture was beautiful and alluring. However, the terrifying aura that permeated from its body caused the expressions of the people below to change. It was an ancient spiritual cloud crane, and there were several figures standing on its back. Their clothes were fluttering in the wind, and they looked like divine spirits that had descended to the mortal world. In particular, there was a girl who was only 18 or 19 years old on the ancient spirit cloud crane. Her white dress was spotless and fluttered in the wind. She had a beautiful face, and her eyes were like deep pools. Her soft black hair reached her ears, and her figure was graceful. As she walked on the crane, she was like a fairy, untainted by dust. Illo. Several giant wolves had wings on their backs, and their bodies were as white as crystals. Their eyes were blood red, and they looked like two miniature blood moons. They emitted a terrifying demonic aura. These were blood-eyed demonic wind wolves, and they were pulling a chariot across the sky. There were many figures on the chariot, and sword-shaped insignia was shining on the chariot. This powerful lineup and terrifying demonic beasts exuded a mighty aura as they headed out of the city. Ancient black-scaled demonic dragon from the heavenly profound sect. Golden-eyed flying tiger from the beast emperor sect. Ancient spiritual cloud crane from the blue cloud sect. Blood-eyed demonic wind wolf from the Shunjian gate. As the ancient black-scaled demonic dragon, golden-eyed flying tiger, ancient spirit cloud crane, blood-eyed demonic wind wolf, and the others left, the surroundings seethed with discussion, and countless gazes surged with reverence and envy. Those were the members of enormous powers like the 5 sects and 3 groups. The sacred martial secret world was dozens of miles away from the Middle State City. It was jointly set up by the experts of the Sacred Mountain and the 5 sects and 3 factions. It was meant to test the true strength of the younger generation in the Middle State City. It was said that there were many traps set up in the secret world to test the younger generation participating in the sacred martial assembly. Although it was a test, it was also filled with danger. If one was not careful, they would die. It was said that every time the sacred martial assembly was held, many of the younger generation would die. However, no one would say anything about it. For a minority, the sacred martial assembly was a great opportunity to make a name for themselves. For the rest, it was a chance for a carp to leap over the Dragon Gate. If he leaped over it, he would soar into the sky. There were people everywhere in the vast mountain range. The places with a good view were already packed to the brim. Mountain peaks, rocks, towering trees, wherever one could stand, they were already densely packed with figures. It was a vast mountain range with several mountain peaks. Surrounding it was a vast and boundless flatland. It was rumored that it had been leveled by experts and could accommodate millions of people. The extent of its vastness was unimaginable. Many young figures stood in the crowd, holding their breaths as they waited. The youthful faces were filled with anticipation and nervousness, and the blood in their hearts was surging. Today was the day when the sacred martial assembly would officially begin. It would also be a grand occasion for them. Being able to participate in this competition was already very rare and commendable. If he could stand out, then he would be different from everyone else. These youngsters were all here to participate in the sacred martial assembly. Millions of people of the same age stood together. Just thinking about it made their hearts surge. Some people were waiting, and their eyes were already filled with fighting spirit. 5 sects, 3 factions, and the Holy Mountain. So what? I want to fight. In the crowd, there was a tall and straight youth. His eyes were filled with a deep black light. Gong Qianxing, Chu Zhanghuan, Yi Su, Xiao Si Jun, my target is Naren Ruyu. In the corner, there was a well-built youth in a tight vest, revealing his strong shoulders. The muscles on his arms bulged like a bomb, as if they could erupt with terrifying power at any time. The crowd was still surging, and many youngsters were entering in an orderly manner. There were experts in armor walking around, maintaining order. It was noisy, crowded, and noisy everywhere, but there was no chaos. In front of such a grand occasion, not many people dared to cause trouble. The consequences would be very serious. Ao roar. There was a beast roar like thunder, resounding through the mountains. From Zhongzhou City, there was a beast roar. Many huge beast shadows came, and many chariots crossed the void. Countless gazes looked up. Everyone knew that those were the people from the 5 sects and 3 factions. For the countless younger generation, they were their strongest opponents in this sacred martial assembly. If they could defeat these people from the 5 sects and 3 factions, it would be their chance to soar to the sky. Ancient black-scaled demonic dragon from the heavenly profound sect. Golden-eyed flying tiger from the beast emperor sect. Ancient spiritual cloud crane from the blue cloud sect. Blood-eyed demonic wind wolf from the Shunjian gate. Huge beasts flew through the sky, pulling chariots, warships, and wings. They carried many figures with powerful auras. They appeared directly above the mountain range, attracting countless envious gazes. Gong Qianxing, one of the top 10 in the younger generation. He will definitely enter the top 16. Xiao Si Jun is also very strong. She is one of the strongest opponents. Li Qingwei from the Blue Cloud sect is so beautiful. It is rumored that her beauty can topple cities, and her cultivation is unfathomable. She is a soul controller with half a step into the heavenly soul. Mu Yao from the Xinjiang Gate is rumored to be a half-beast. She is incomparably strong. It is said that the number 1 seed from the Shunjian Gate is Jianwuk. The arrival of the people from the 5 sects and 3 factions caused countless discussions. In the past few days, the news of the strongest young generation had spread throughout Zhongzhou City. The names of the young geniuses who had the highest chance of entering the final round had already spread far and wide. Oh, another beast roar came, and a huge beast mount cast a black shadow. The Skyblaze sect is also here. The strongest in the Skyblaze sect is Qi Tianxian. There is also the 3 Yuan sect. That is the mount of the 3 Yuan sect. The strongest in the younger generation is Feng Qingnon. The distinct Void sect is also here. The one in front should be Lin Fan. Clear Sky sect. That girl should be Qinyanwan. She is also very beautiful. The mountain range was in an uproar. Countless gazes were blazing. The people from the 5 sects and 3 factions were all present. They appeared at a low altitude. The outstanding young disciples attracted praise from all directions. Oh, another shocking movement came. Many huge beasts appeared. Their aura and lineup were not below the 5 sects and 3 factions. I don't know. Who are these people? They actually dare to have such a lineup. In the mountain range, some people were surprised. They did not know what kind of power this was, but the aura and lineup were not below the 5 sects and 3 factions. Ignorant. Those are the people from Yuqian Palace. Someone replied, how could Yuqian Palace's lineup be below the 5 sects and 3 factions? Is Yuqian Palace also participating in the sacred martial assembly? Chapter 757. The Heavenly Palace has its own disciples. They've always participated in such a grand event. Many of them are talented. However, the people of the Heavenly Palace are too mysterious. We can't find any information about them before they participate in the sacred martial assembly. The eyes of those in the know twitched. The people that the heavenly palace sent to participate in the sacred martial assembly were not weak. In the sky, Su-yi stood on the savage beast mount of the heavenly palace. Looking down at the ant-like crowd below, he couldn't help but be shocked. This scene was simply unimaginable. The clamor soared to the heavens, and countless gazes looked over. Su-yi's blood boiled as the atmosphere was affected by it. It's so lively. Su Xiaoshui stood on the shoulder of the Green Emperor and looked around curiously. However, the Green Emperor had always felt a sense of trepidation in his heart. Su Xiaoshui's invisible aura made the Green Emperor feel fear and dread from the depths of his beast soul. I'm sure little brother, Yi Su will become famous this time. Vice Palace Lord Guanlan said to Su-yi on the savage beast mount. This time, the heavenly palace sent many people, but the leader was only Vice Palace Lord Guanlan. This also proved that the heavenly palace paid enough attention to such a grand event. The heavenly palace had never been interested in mundane matters. Su-yi bowed. These days, he had received a lot of protection from the heavenly palace. He was grateful. When he left this morning, Su-yi learned that the heavenly palace had also sent disciples to participate in the sacred martial assembly. Although the heavenly palace only sent a few disciples, Su-yi could feel that none of the people sent by the heavenly palace were weak. This was especially true for the leader of the youths sent by the imperial palace. He was about 22 or 23 years old, giving Su-yi an unfathomable feeling. This young man was dressed in a greenish-yellow robe. He had a handsome face and a pair of pitch-black eyes. His aura was very hidden, making it difficult for others to see through him. However, there was an invisible aura around him. Isn't that Yi Su from the Balwang sect? So he is Yi Su. He defeated the Holy Mountain's Ouyang Jinwei in one move. Rumor has it that he might be a heaven-ranked soul controller. #are positive. On the front page, DFA in the crowd below, some people recognized Su-yi and started to talk about him. Haha, looks like little brother, Yi Su has already become famous. Vice Palace Master Guanlan teased. The clamor of the crowd below could not escape his ears. Su-yi also heard some of the discussion and smiled helplessly. However, deep in his heart there was some pride. Soon, the mounts of the imperial palace and the 5 sects and 3 factions all stood together, each occupying a low altitude. Whoosh whoosh, numerous gazes landed on the people from the imperial heavenly palace. Greetings, Palace Master Guanlan. Many people from the 5 sects and 3 factions greeted Vice Palace Master Guanlan while sizing up the youths from the imperial palace. They wanted to know the background of the youths sent by the imperial palace this time. One must know that the youths sent by the imperial palace to participate in the sacred martial assembly were the strongest contenders for the championship. All eyes were on Su-yi. Many of them had complicated looks, especially Jian Wanyin and Bai Mingshan. Su-yi's gaze had already swept across the lineup in front of him. Those powerful savage beast mounts were indeed worthy of being from the 5 sects and 3 factions. Very strong. Su-yi could not help but exclaim in admiration of the youths in the lineup. Their temperament was extraordinary, and they were all favored by the heavens. Of course, Su-yi only exclaimed in admiration, not fear. With his keen soul power, Su-yi glanced at the most powerful youths, and his eyes flickered with battle intent. Since the sacred martial assembly was here, it was time to test himself. This would be his most official test. Su-yi saw many familiar figures in the crowd. Jian Wanyin, Lu Xiaohu, Gong Qinxing, Li Qingwei, etc. In the lineup of the Shenzhen Gate, Su-yi could not help but tremble, and his heart clenched. It was a childlike old man with weathered eyes. It was Elder Su. Su-yi knew how much he owed this old man under his seemingly stern face and eccentric temper. At this moment, he could only look at the old man in front of him and could not go forward to salute him. Su-yi felt even more guilty in his heart. There were also many familiar figures such as Mu Yao, Sita Luyan, Ryugan River, Sakura Asaka, Gong Qi, etc. Su-yi was moved, but he immediately restrained himself. Greetings, elders. On the flying savage beast, he greeted the elders of the 5 sects and 3 factions. Deputy Palace Master Guanlon also responded to them one by one. But in the end, his gaze fell on Suruga of the Xinjiang Gate. He smiled and said, "Old man, you're here too? What? You've made progress in your cultivation. Do you want to bleed again?" Looking at Deputy Palace Master Guanlon, Elder Suruga just raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at Elder Guanlon. "I won't fight with you." Deputy Palace Master Guanlon shook his head and smiled. But there was obviously some awkwardness and fear in his smile. Some of the experts present also secretly laughed without saying a word, but their eyes fell on Elder Su Kwanga, intentionally or unintentionally, with a little bit of dread. Everyone present knew that Elder Suruga's strength was terrifying. He had indeed made Guanlon suffer in the past. Sui saw this scene and was a little surprised. It seemed that Elder Suruga and Deputy Palace Master Guanlon were quite familiar with each other. Moreover, Elder Suruga's strength seemed to be above Deputy Palace Master Guanlon's. Many people cast their eyes over, and there was an obscure aura sweeping over. Sui felt it and looked in the same direction. Sui saw that many people were also sizing him up. They were all people of the 5 sects and 3 factions. Some were curious, and some were unfriendly. Sui also saw Li Qingwei. She was a spotless girl. She turned her head slightly, and on her delicate and beautiful face, her starry eyes looked at Sui. Their eyes met, and she nodded slightly. "Ku!" Roar. The hissing sound pierced through the clouds and cracked stones, and the beast roar was like thunder. From the direction of Zhongzhou City, a huge beast shadow crossed the sky again, and in a few flashes, it was close to the sky. Numerous gazes seemed to know who had arrived and immediately looked over in unison. 2 huge, savage demon beasts rose into the sky, pulling a huge chariot. Many figures stood there, followed by many savage demon beasts. Their figures were also flickering, and their auras were fierce. The 2 huge, savage demon beasts were covered in green scales, with 2 horns on their heads and 2 claws under their abdomens. They were fierce and majestic, and their red eyes were like 2 bright suns. Red-eyed green flood dragon. It's the red-eyed green flood dragon. They're from the sacred mountain. Chapter 758. Scarlet-eyed green flood dragon. Sui also saw the scarlet-eyed green flood dragon. It was a barbaric beast that was not much weaker than the Mingxi. It was a true demon race. Then, Sui's gaze fell on the 2 scarlet-eyed green flood dragons. There was a flickering golden light, like a small sun, rising in the sky. It was a huge lawn bird with a moving posture and majesty. Its whole body was filled with golden flame-like brilliance. A golden flame lawn. Sui was surprised. It was actually a golden flame lawn, a barbaric beast of the demon race that was on par with the Mingxi. It was far above the scarlet-eyed green flood dragon. At this moment, there was only a young man standing on the golden flame lawn. He had a strange light green hair that was not tied up. It was draped over his back and swayed with the wind. It was an extraordinary sight. It's him. That's Naren Ruyu from the sacred mountain. Saint Naren Ruyu. The appearance of such an extraordinary young man attracted the attention of everyone. Many people were shouting in the crowd below, including many young ladies. This youth was too outstanding. He stepped foot into the golden flame divine lawn, his divine might extraordinary. He immediately drew everyone's attention, becoming the center of attention. He was Naren Ruyu. He had a high nose, thin lips, and sword-like eyebrows. The outline of his handsome face was perfect and impeccable. Naren Ruyu was calm. He didn't even look down. The pair of deep green eyes under his sword-like eyebrows were like jade. It carried a kind of womanly charm that made people's hearts tremble. His aura was astonishing. Everyone was sizing him up and cheering for him. In the hearts of most people, Naren Ruyu was the champion of this year's Sacred Martial Assembly. He was the most peerless youth who could suppress all heroes. The fact that he was the saint of the Sacred Mountain was enough to prove everything. Every time the Sacred Martial Assembly was held, The champion would always be the strongest of the Sacred Mountain's younger generation. There was no doubt about this. Many people looked up. They wanted to see what this proud son of heaven looked like. They wanted to see if there was anything extraordinary about him. After those people saw it with their own eyes, they were even more shocked. Naren Ryu was too powerful, like the reincarnation of a god, not like a mortal. That's the Holy Mountain's holy son, Naren Ryu. He's destined to be the most dazzling genius of the Sacred Martial Assembly. He'll be able to sweep through all the heroes. Many people sighed in admiration. This type of youth was already destined to dazzle all of Central Province and shock everyone. His bearing is steady, his spirit is valiant, and he is extraordinary. Looks like the champion will be none other than him. There were a few experts who sighed in admiration as well. This young man was too powerful. Even those who were experienced and knowledgeable felt a great pressure when they saw him. The golden flame godly Luan soared into the sky. Wherever it passed, it caused a commotion among the crowd. Many young women cheered. Sui also saw Naren Ryu. He had seen this person before and guessed his identity. After all, the Holy Son Naren Ryu's name had resounded like thunder in the past few days. Sui was secretly moved by such a young man. He was unfathomable. However, Sui was not afraid. The Holy Mountain's Holy Son should be the peak existence of the Holy Mountain's younger generation. There was bound to be a battle. The true test of the Sacred Martial Assembly might be on this Naren Ryu. The arrival of the Holy Mountain's people and the City Lord's mansions, people immediately became the focus of the audience. Elder Bing Xiao, Wang Chuanda, and the rest of the Holy Mountain's people stood on the war chariot, watching the reaction and uproar with smiles in their eyes. This time, the Holy Mountain's holy son, Naren Ryu's name, would resound throughout the entire Central Province. In every Sacred Martial Assembly, the Holy Mountain's young generation would be famous everywhere. However, not everyone in the crowd was cheering and shouting. There were other voices as well. This time, the young disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions are also very strong. Gong Qian Xing, Li Qingwei, Xiao Sijun, and the Dark Horse of the Bawang sect, Yi Su. This Sacred Martial Assembly seems to be more lively than the previous ones. There are geniuses coming out in large numbers. However, Naren Ryu is the Holy Mountain's holy son. It seems that this Sacred Martial Assembly will be the fiercest showdown. The collision will produce the most brilliant and dazzling sparks. Looking at the large sect's younger generation, many voices were discussing. The arrival of the Holy Mountain's people was followed by the millions of young people from the 5 sects and 3 factions. For the average young people, Naren Ryu, the Holy Mountain's holy son, was an existence that they could only hope to reach in their lifetime. For some of the young people from the 5 sects and 3 factions, Naren Ryu was their strongest opponent this time. Sui watched for a while and then didn't care. Instead, he glanced at the group of young men and women from the Holy Mountain with some interest. After entering the Sacred Martial secret world, the Holy Mountain had better not provoke him. He couldn't do anything to those old guys. However, no one could enter the Sacred Martial secret world. It was said that no one was monitoring it. When the time came, he didn't mind collecting some interest. Boom! Sacred Mountain, Imperial Celestial Palace, 5 sects and 3 factions. These major sects and those geniuses who were the talk of the town had all come. On top of the mountains and peaks, there were also cheers and excitement, causing a huge commotion. 2. More D. New U. Square root. Fast plus hashtag up. That's the 3 Yuan sect's Feng Qingno. He's so handsome. That's Lin Fan from the Qingshu sect. He's also handsome. Qi Tianquan's aura is so strong. The most powerful young people were the hot topic of discussion. Even the densely packed younger generation below were paying close attention to it. Those hot topics were all geniuses who were destined to have a glorious life. In the Sacred Martial Assembly, their names would resound everywhere. When the Sacred Martial secret world opens in a while, be careful when you enter. There are many dangers inside. Although everything is a test, the danger is real. There are traps and some untamed savage beasts inside. They're all tests. The first 32 people to break out of the sacred martial secret world will be able to set foot on the 32 sacred martial platforms in the void and participate in the final battle. As for those who fail to break out tomorrow at this time, the sacred martial secret world will dissipate and they will automatically walk out. Merciless West's voice fell into Su Yi's ears. She reminded Su Yi to be careful. She said, "There are many illusions inside, real and fake. You are a soul controller, so you'll have some advantages." Su Yi nodded. He was never a careless person. He would be careful. In the air, the experts from the 5 sects, 3 factions, and other major mountain sects were also whispering something to the younger generation around them. They were probably giving their final instructions. Although the sacred martial secret world was a test, the danger inside was real. The people sent by the major forces to participate in the sacred martial assembly were all outstanding geniuses of the younger generation. Therefore, no accidents could happen. Chapter 759. If I can break out of the sacred martial secret world and step onto the void sacred martial platform, I will soar into the sky. Someone muttered to himself as he looked at the young disciples of the 5 sects, 3 factions, and Sacred Mountain. Those of the same generation were his true opponents and goals. I will definitely break through. Many young people secretly gritted their teeth as their fighting spirit surged. They knew that it would be difficult for them to win the championship, but as long as they could break out of the sacred martial secret world and be recognized by the major sects, it would be enough. There were also young people who were ambitious. So what if they were disciples of the major sects? Once they entered the sacred martial secret world, they would lose the protection of the major sections. When they met, it was not certain who would win. Swoosh, swoosh. Soon, the young disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions jumped down from the chariots, warships, and savage beasts. Waves of yuan qi fluctuated and their figures dissipated. They landed on the ground and stood in front of the millions of young disciples. Swoosh, swoosh. Several disciples of the Yutian Palace also jumped down from their savage beasts and landed on the ground under the signal of Vice Palace Master Guanlon. "Go, be careful." Merciless West patted Su Yi's shoulder with a serious face and a faint light in his eyes. After entering the sacred martial secret world, Su Yi could only rely on himself for 1 day and 1 night. Among all the sects, he was the only one from the Bawang sect. There were many disciples of Sacred Mountain. "I will definitely do what I promised you." Su Yi smiled slightly and did not seem to care too much. However, the fighting spirit in his eyes could not be concealed. All of Central State City's younger generation, millions of people were participating. In this kind of atmosphere, which young person could remain unmoved? Su Yi was also at an age where he was full of vigor. So how could he not feel his blood boiling with excitement? It's about to begin. Looking at Sacred Mountain, the disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions had already landed. The atmosphere was tense for no reason. The young disciples were all eager to fight, eager to give it a try. The formation of the Sacred Mountain was entrenched in the void. A group of cultivators emanated a faintly discernible aura that spread throughout the mountains, causing the air to freeze for no reason and the beasts in the mountains to tremble. Elder Ice Cauldron stood at the top, looking down. His gaze circled around the group, and his eyes flickered with light. He was somewhat emotional. Back then, Bing Cauldron had also participated in such a grand event and competed with the younger generation of the entire Central Continent. Although he wasn't the champion of the Sacred Martial Assembly, he had still shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. That was when he was young and vigorous. At that time, he was just like these young people, like the rising sun, full of vitality. In the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly, the geniuses will compete for supremacy. Whoever can sweep away all the heroes and suppress all the strong ones will have an inkling of what will happen in the Sacred Martial Secret World. Now, the Sacred Martial Secret World will open. Elder Ice Cauldron opened his mouth. His voice was laced with yuan qi and reverberated in the air. It was loud enough for everyone present to hear clearly and reverberate. There was also a huge pressure in his voice. When it landed in people's ears, it caused their ears to roar and tremble for no reason. It was as if they were being crushed by a mountain. Such an aura pressure caused countless people to be secretly shocked and in awe. He was indeed worthy of being a cultivator of a sacred mountain. Boom! At this moment, countless auras fluctuated within the mountains and peaks. Everyone's gazes were all focused on the front. Rumble. At the same time, within the mountains, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Suddenly, there was a dazzling burst of light in front of them, rising from the heavens and the earth. The invisible aura was vast and mighty, and the heavens and the earth changed color. The rumbling sound was endless. From within the mountains in front, the light was dazzling and fog rose, covering the heavens and the earth. He stood in the crowd and looked forward. He felt a vast aura fluctuation, and there was a soul aura spreading out. In the fog that covered the heavens and the earth, the light fluctuation was accompanied by the energy fluctuation of the heavens and the earth. It filled the void with a sacred aura, and within it, there was a bright light, as if it was connected to another world. The gate to the sacred martial secret world had been opened, and it appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It traversed the mountains and connected the void to the earth. The mighty aura caused countless people to be deeply shocked. Only the sacred mountain, the 5 sects, and the 3 factions could arrange such a method. Cool Craftsman D Edition. Only Carat 1 Q Genuine Edition 5. The others are all % Genuine Edition. Inside the sacred martial secret world, misfortune and fortune are uncertain, and it is extremely dangerous. All participants have no regard for life or death. When you enter, bring your registration Jade token. I now announce that the 31st year of the Sacred Martial Assembly will now begin. Elder Ice Cauldron's voice rumbled out, and there was a bright light in his eyes. Boom! At this moment, the cheers in the mountains shook, and it soared into the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. Whoosh whoosh! The extraordinary young disciples of the sacred mountain, the 5 sects, and the 3 factions moved. Yuan Qi of various attributes fluctuated on their bodies, and their figures swept out, wrapped in Yuan Qi light, and directly leaped towards the entrance in front. They stood at the front and entered the sacred martial secret world with the fastest speed. They were also the most likely to break out of the sacred martial secret world as soon as possible. Rumble! Waves of aura fluctuated, and these extraordinary young figures moved together, attracting attention from all directions. Brother Isu, let's go. Once you enter the sacred martial secret world, you will be automatically scattered to every corner. Be careful. The leading young man from the heavenly palace said to Su Yi with a smile. He also led the disciples of the heavenly palace into the sacred martial secret world, wrapped in Yuan Qi light of different attributes. Let's begin. Countless auras fluctuated, and their voices shook the 9 heavens. The most outstanding young people in the entire Central State were gathered here at this moment. Su Yi's heart was surging, and his blood was boiling. He wanted to compete. Whoosh! Moving his body, Yuan Qi swept out from the soles of his feet, and Su Yi also entered the sacred martial secret world's entrance. Enter! Whoosh whoosh! Countless auras fluctuated, and millions of people erupted. They were all the most outstanding young people in the entire Central State. Any one of them was outstanding in their local area. Today, these young people had gathered together, and it was a grand occasion. They wanted to see who could suppress all the heroes, sweep away all 4 directions, and become the king of geniuses. Go for it. Sacred Martial Assembly. Let's see who can sweep away all of their peers in the Central State this time. Among the thousands of mountains, there was a hubbub of voices, and their shouts soared into the sky. There were many powerhouses present. They had brought the most outstanding disciples from their respective mountain sects and families, hoping to stand out in the Sacred Martial Assembly. However, who could be called the true geniuses in the end, and who could become famous in a single battle, and whose names would resound in all directions, would all be revealed in the Sacred Martial Secret World. Everyone knew that the sacred martial secret world was, in fact, a final selection to screen out the true geniuses. Only then would the true geniuses be able to compete for hegemony and become the king of geniuses. Chapter 760. Suddenly, a figure flew out from the entrance of the sacred martial secret world. He spat out a mouthful of blood and landed heavily on the ground. Trying to sneak into the sacred martial secret world when you are over the age limit? You are courting death. A majestic voice resounded throughout the place. Someone wanted to fish in troubled waters. This person was over the age limit and also wanted to participate in the sacred martial assembly. He even grabbed a registration jade token, thinking that he could enter the sacred martial secret world. However, he did not expect to be directly blocked by the sacred martial secret world. Watching Su Yi's figure enter, Merciless West's eyes were still fixed on him. He did not know how far Su Yi could go. The Sacred Martial Assembly was a competition between the most outstanding young people in the entire Central State. If Su Yi could really reach the end and enter the top 2, then what was the point of agreeing to that kid? Su Yi entered the Sacred Martial Secret World. There was a hazy fog everywhere, blocking his vision and even affecting his soul power. Soon, Su Yi and the few people from the Heavenly Palace were separated. Many people who were originally walking together at the entrance of the endless fog were separated as soon as they entered. After about a quarter of an hour, the fog in front of him gradually dissipated and his vision became clear. Su Yi walked out and looked at the scene before him. The mountains were continuous, the mountains were tall, and the forests were dense. It was like an ancient forest that few people had ever set foot in. The trees towered into the sky, and the ancient vines were strong and strong. The entire space was slightly dim, and it seemed to be somewhat different from the outside world. Some figures appeared in front of Su Yi. Although the sacred martial secret world was vast, there were millions of people who entered. There were too many people. It was even said that the stronger the person was, the more they would be automatically separated by the sacred martial secret world. This was because the 5 sects and 3 factions of the Sacred Mountain did not want the stronger disciples to meet so early in the morning. If they fought directly, the consequences would be unimaginable. After all, the disciples who were at the top were from the Sacred Mountain and the 5 sects and 3 factions. Among the figures in front of him, Su Yi saw a familiar figure. It was Ryugan River from the Xinjiang Gate. He stood in front of him and looked at something. His body was wrapped in the light of vitality, and his aura was very strong. He then rushed forward. Whoosh, whoosh. Many people who appeared in the surroundings also flew over. Su Yi was not in a hurry. Instead, he observed his surroundings. Using his soul power, he tried to sense the aura around him. Although it was somewhat abnormal, he could not sense anything. This was the effect of the Strange Gate's illusory spirit world. Su Yi was clear in his heart, but he didn't know much about the Strange Gate's illusory spirit world. This caused Su Yi to feel somewhat depressed. From the looks of it, he would have to properly comprehend the Phantom World in the future. In any case, he was a soul controller. How could he miss out on such an opportunity? Soon, Su Yi's figure also swept forward cautiously. He was constantly on guard against the dangers around him. It was said that there were dangers from the illusory spirit world in this place, as well as some untamed wild beasts. Su Yi wasn't afraid of those wild beasts. He believed that there wouldn't be any strong wild beasts here. Otherwise, the Sacred Mountain and the 5 sects and 3 factions wouldn't have taken the risk to let their disciples in. In the continuous mountain range, one's speed would be greatly affected. Moments later, Su Yi felt that the consumption of yuan qi was several times higher than the outside world. It was even more than 10 times. This unknowingly affected his speed. Pung, 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 oh, whoa. In less than 2 hours, there were muffled sounds of energy in front of him. There were people fighting fiercely, and there were also shocking roars of wild beasts. Soon, Su Yi saw 3 youths. They were all close to the origin spirit realm, but they were surrounded by more than 10 ferocious wild beasts. These wild beasts were not from the same clan, and their cultivation wasn't too strong. However, it was enough to deal with these three youths and surround them. The three youths were already covered in wounds. They were bleeding everywhere, and their faces were pale. He hesitated for a moment. His figure swept forward, and an invisible aura was released from his body. Oh! The wild beasts sensed Su Yi's aura and trembled in fear. Their fierce eyes were filled with wariness. Let's go. He waved his hand and scolded the wild beasts. He didn't want to fight. When the wild beasts saw this, they immediately left in a panic. They didn't dare to stay. When the three youths who were covered in blood saw this, they were shocked and couldn't recover from their shock. That young man was actually able to repel the wild beast with a wave of his hand. How shocking was that? It's Isu from the Bawang sect. One of the youths recognized Su Yi. His gaze changed and was filled with shock and awe. I saved you because I wanted to ask you some questions. Su Yi said. The sacred martial secret world was originally a test. For the wild beasts, it was natural selection. Although they were humans and naturally leaned towards humans, after cultivating the Origin Supreme technique, Su Yi didn't feel any hostility towards the wild beasts. He saved the three youths because he wanted to ask them some questions about the sacred martial secret world. We will tell you everything we know. The three youths bowed. They had just survived a disaster and were still in shock. Afterward, Su Yi learned from the three that all the participants of the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly were scattered around the Sacred Martial Secret World. The exit was in the center of the Sacred Martial Secret World. Along the way, there would be trials and trials. The first 32 people to break out of the Sacred Martial Secret World will be able to step onto the Void Sacred Martial platform and have the final battle. That would be the true end of the Sacred Martial Arts Assembly. Su Yi nodded. It seemed that not only did he have to break out of the Sacred Martial Secret World, but he also had to do it as fast as possible. Whoosh! Yuan Qi swept out from the soles of his feet. Su Yi didn't want to delay any longer. He didn't want any accidents to happen. Not long after, a huge bronze python shot out from the towering tree like lightning. It opened its bloody mouth and tried to swallow Su Yi. The python was coiled up on the tree like an ancient vine. It didn't have any aura fluctuations and was very well hidden. Su Yi didn't notice it in advance. Fortunately, Su Yi had been releasing his soul force and was carefully observing his surroundings. Just as the python moved, he felt it. Yuan Qi surged from his body, and Yuan Qi erupted from his feet. He took a few steps to the left, dodging the python's attack and coming to the side of the python. At the same time, Su Yi clenched his fist and wrapped it in Yuan Qi. He directly punched out. Bang! The speed was very fast, and the energy was like thunder. The bronze python was directly shattered by Su Yi's fist and turned into a rain of light. However, no blood spurted out. No, it's an illusion. Su Yi's expression suddenly changed. This was very strange. This was an illusion. The python was actually an illusion. It wasn't a living creature, but its aura was no different from a living creature. Chapter 761. Being careful. Su Yi concentrated, but that terrifying python did not appear again. Su Yi was a little confused, but he became even more careful, not daring to be careless. Roar! Not long after, a huge ferocious ape pounced out from the forest. It had sharp fangs, and its fist was wrapped in black light. With astral winds, it punched towards Su Yi. Su Yi was already prepared. He had been carefully guarding against it, and he directly punched it. Bang! It was a shocking collision. Although Su Yi's fist was small, it directly shattered the black light and the huge ape's body. It turned into a rain of black light and disappeared. It's an illusion again. Su Yi frowned. This ferocious ape was an illusion, but its aura and strength were very real. The surroundings returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. It's similar to summoning remnant souls. Su Yi was still pondering. These illusionary barbaric beasts were similar to the soul controller's method of summoning remnant souls. Thinking about it, Su Yi did not find it strange. The sacred martial secret world was set up by many soul controllers, so this method was normal. It was just that it was more mysterious inside the sacred martial secret world. So he continued on his way. With his strength, he was able to escape unscathed twice. At this moment, He completely understood what Merciless West had said. Soul controllers did have some advantages. These illusionary beasts did not have any aura, and when they suddenly appeared, even if one's cultivation was stronger than these barbaric beasts, it would be easy to get into trouble. However, the moment these illusionary beasts appeared, he had already sensed them with his soul power, and he was prepared. He also roughly guessed the origin of these illusionary beasts. They did have some advantages compared to others. This place was too big. He continued on his way, but he did not know where the end was. In the next 4 hours, he encountered many illusionary barbaric beasts again. They were stronger than the previous ones, and there were even a few of them attacking at the same time. This was the sacred martial secret world, a test for the younger generation. Therefore, no matter how strong these methods were, they couldn't be that strong. Su Yi's own strength was genuine, and he was also a soul controller. He had turned danger into safety time and time again. However, this also made Su increasingly astonished. With such methods, even an ordinary 6th or 7th level origin spirit stage practitioner would find it difficult to escape. Phew! He took a deep breath and adjusted his state of mind. This process consumed a lot of Yuan Qi. Although he did not attack much, it consumed a lot of his Yuan Qi. Ku! With an ear-piercing shriek, a blood-colored bird swooped down from the sky. The surrounding forest undulated, and tree branches snapped. Its sharp claws were like hooks as it grabbed at Su Yi. Su Yi looked up and immediately retreated rapidly. Rumble! Suddenly, the ground sank, and a huge pit appeared under Su Yi's feet. It was as if a huge vortex had appeared around Su Yi. It was bottomless, and a terrifying aura was howling. Su Yi was caught off guard, and his body fell straight down. A huge devouring force spread out from the vortex, as if it wanted to pull Su Yi into a bottomless abyss. In a panic, Su Yi's Yuan Qi wings stretched out from his back. Red light shone brightly as he soared into the sky. However, the devouring force was too strong, and it wrapped around Su Yi's body. The bird swooped down, and its sharp claws seemed to be able to tear through the void. It was already at Su Yi's forehead. Boom! At this moment, Su Yi stomped his feet, and the Yuan Qi wings on his back burst out. At the same time, he wrapped his palm with Yuan Qi and shot it out. Bang, bang, bang. Red light swept out, and the sound of energy was endless. The bird was directly smashed into pieces, turning into a blood-colored rain of light. The ground also returned to normal. It was as if nothing had happened. However, Su Yi still had some lingering fear. Everything was very strange. The sacred martial secret world was really mysterious. There was no time to delay. Afraid that someone would beat him to it, Su Yi continued on his journey. How strange. Why is there no one here? Su Yi was puzzled. It had been a few hours, and he hadn't met a single person. Logically speaking, there should have been people who were much faster than him. No matter what, he should have met some people along the way, unless he was too far behind. However, Su Yi was still confident in his speed and strength. He would not fall behind. Su Yi, why are you here? At this moment, a figure appeared in front of him. It seemed to have sensed Su Yi's movement and turned around. It was Ryugen River of the Shenjin Gate. Seeing Su Yi, Ryugen River was overjoyed and a little nervous. He immediately walked towards Su Yi and said, "The sacred martial secret world is very dangerous. Be careful. It is very dangerous." Su Yi nodded. He did not expect to meet Ryugen River. Ryugen River was indeed in front of him, just now. No. Suddenly, Su Yi was shocked. He immediately came back to his senses and subconsciously retreated. At this moment, he had used a method to change his appearance. Ryugen River did not recognize him at all. Even if he knew him, he would know Isu of the Bawang sect, not Su Yi. Boom! At the same time, Ryugan River made his move. He directly blasted out a punch with the force of thunder and instantly landed on Su Yi's chest. Su Yi retreated and dissipated a lot of the force. Illusion. Su Yi understood that the Ryugan River in front of him was also fake, just like those remnant souls and beast shadows. Boom! With a slap, a blazing aura swept out. Su Yi also took the opportunity to slap Ryugan River. Bang bang! The Ryugan River in front of him shattered and turned into a rain of light and disappeared. Dang dang! Su Yi staggered. Although he dissipated a lot of the force, he was still affected. Fortunately, he was not injured. That was close. However, this time, Su Yi was really shocked. If he was a little bit slower and the strength of the illusion was a little stronger, the consequences would be unimaginable. Something is wrong. There must be something wrong. Su Yi did not leave. He kept feeling that something was wrong. He did not see anyone in these few hours. There were only illusions everywhere. This was too abnormal. Moreover, he was just wondering why there was no one around when he suddenly saw Ryugan River. Releasing his soul force and carefully sensing the surroundings, Su Yi pondered. He calmed his heart and slightly closed his eyes. Su Yi guessed that there must be something wrong, but he did not notice it. So, something seemed to be fluctuating in the void. From the towering tree not far away, a bronze python appeared once again. It opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards Su Yi. Rumble! At the same time, the ground under Su Yi's feet sank again and a vortex appeared. A suction force surged out and engulfed Su Yi's feet, making it difficult for Su Yi to move. At this moment, Su Yi's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened. The light in his eyes fluctuated like lightning. The corner of his mouth lifted and he said, "So that's how it is." "I know." Boom. ZQ Masta, verse F of the new W chapter. Chapter 762. The sunken ground trembled and collapsed inch by inch. The suction force disappeared. Under Su Yi's punch, the bronze python was directly smashed into pieces. The rain of light poured down and collapsed in all directions. Su Yi's eyes moved, and the yuan qi under his feet swept out. He took a step in the direction of the light rain dissipating, and a palm print slammed forward again. The void fluctuated as if a crack had appeared. Su Yi took the opportunity to step out. Hula! When Su Yi's figure stepped out of the spatial crack, everything in front of him suddenly changed. This was the place where Su Yi was a few hours ago. Su Yi clearly remembered it. Illusion, real and fake. V9 look. Hashtag version 1, chapter 4, section Y on 4. Su Yi secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. He was shocked and had a lingering fear in his heart. Only now did he completely understand that not only were the barbarian beast's phantoms illusions, but he himself had been trapped in an illusion all along. What a powerful illusion. Su Yi sucked in a breath of cold air. This was the sacred martial secret world. It was said that it was related to the illusory spirit world. Su Yi secretly decided in his heart that after the sacred martial assembly, he must find Merciless West to understand the illusory spirit world. Whoosh whoosh, not far away, many figures appeared. When they saw Su Yi from afar, they frowned. It seemed that they did not want to get close to Su Yi. They were very afraid and avoided him. Su Yi breathed a sigh of relief. He had indeed gotten out of the illusion. It was only delayed for a few hours. He should have fallen behind by a lot. If he could not break out of the illusion as fast as possible, it would be useless no matter how strong he was. Su Yi stuffed a yuan qi replenishing pill into his mouth. Although he had consumed a lot of yuan qi, the degree of consumption was still within the range that Su Yi could accept. However, after seeing everything in the sacred martial secret world, Su Yi did not dare to be careless. He had to maintain his peak state at all times. On the road again, Su Yi had no choice but to be even more careful. If he was trapped in the illusory realm again, it would be troublesome. Although using the Fuyao's 100 transformation steps would consume a lot of his vital energy, Su Yi had no choice but to chase after them and hoped that the others would be obstructed as well. That way, he would have more chances to succeed. After a while, an astonishing aura fluctuated in front of him, and a tense atmosphere filled the area. In a vast valley, many people were gathered outside the valley. They were looking at something, but none of them dared to get close. So he was also curious. He leaped onto a boulder far away and saw two figures in the valley with swords drawn. It seemed that they were ready to attack at any moment. These are two youths. Both of them stood on huge rocks and faced each other from afar. Strictly speaking, he had seen these two youths before. The youth on the left was dressed in green robes. The collar and cuffs of his robes were embroidered with exquisite patterns. His jet black hair was tied up in a ponytail as he stood on the boulder. His body was tall and slender, and he exuded an aura of nobility. Looking at such a youth from afar, one would feel that he was too high to reach, and that he was as low as a speck of dust. The Beast Emperor sect. He should be the young lord, right? From afar, he retracted his aura. He had seen this young man before. From the aura he exuded, it was clear that this young man was none other than the young master of the Beast Emperor's sect. As for the youth on the right, he looked to be around 24 or 25 years old. He was slightly older than the youth on the left, but his aura was also extraordinary. His face was handsome, and there was a hint of elegance in his sharp aura. His eyes were like lightning. He originally didn't recognize this person. However, he had seen this youth in the lineup of the Shunjian Gate in the Central Continent city. At this moment, this youth had the insignia of the Shunjian Gate on his shoulder. This meant that he was undoubtedly a disciple of the Shunjian Gate. Shunjian Gate, Jian Wuk. He also heard some news. It was said that Jian Wuk was a disciple of the Shunjian Gate from the previous batch. He was also the strongest representative of the previous batch. His talent was outstanding, and his strength was extremely high. He was just at the right age to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. There were even a few disciples from the previous batch who came to the Central Continent city to participate in the Sacred Martial Assembly. Shunjian Gate, Jian Wuk. I've heard of you before. Lord Shaoxi looked at Jian Wuk. Her voice had an elegant and enchanting magnetism to it. The corners of her mouth were moderately thick, making it seem as if a dazzling smile would appear at any time. However, the battle intent in her eyes was self-evident. Young Lord, I've also heard of you. Jian Wuk looked at the young lord. His origin energy fluctuated around him. Then let's have a battle. Let me see the strength of the Shunjian Gate's disciples this time. The young lord looked at Jian Wuk. The battle intent in his eyes grew stronger. He had met Jian Wuk, and he wanted to have a battle to prove himself. Then let's have a battle. Jian Wuk nodded. His origin energy circled around him, and a sharp aura circulated around him. He could feel the young lord's battle intent. Then let's have a battle. He also needed a battle to prove himself. All right. The simple words came out of his mouth. The smile on the young lord's face disappeared. His body was enveloped by a dazzling origin energy. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his aura surged. He stomped his feet on the ground and jumped off the huge rock. His origin energy wrapped around his fist, and like a meteor, he punched towards Jian Wuk. Such a punch had a ferocious aura, like a ferocious beast descending from the mountains. Buzz! Jian Wuk drew his sword. His expression was calm and sharp. The treasured sword in his hand was filled with wind and lightning. Sword chi shot out rapidly, exuding a sharp aura. Walala! The moment the two youths made their moves, even before they came into contact with each other, sand and pebbles were sent flying. It was like a tornado, causing the expressions of the spectators to change. They were indeed the representatives of the younger generation of the Beast Emperor sect and Shunjian Gate. The fist arrived in front of Jian Wuk. The roar of a beast could be faintly heard, and the fist glowed with a bright light. It was like a ferocious beast pouncing towards Jian Wuk. Jian Wuk's sword light was extremely sharp. Light flickered as sword light shot out, blocking the fist and destroying the origin chi light. Rumble! The huge rocks in the surroundings crumbled as a powerful energy swept out, causing dust to fly everywhere. The two silhouettes landed on the huge rock at the same time, exchanging blows once again. How strong! Many people were shocked. These two youths were too strong. They were all proud and arrogant people, and had their own talents. But now, when they saw these two youths of the same generation, they couldn't summon up any arrogance in their hearts. Xiao. Jianwu's attacks were too fast. He activated his sword technique, and the sword light swept out, swift and fierce. Chapter 763. Xiao Jun's hair fluttered in the wind. She was fighting barehanded. This was also the advantage of the Beast Emperor sect. It was said that the Beast Emperor sect had a secret art that could strengthen the bodies of their disciples. Oh, faintly, the roars of beasts echoed through the mountains. Xiao Jun's attacks were ferocious, filled with a tyrannical aura. Those who were familiar with Xiao Jun would sigh in admiration. Such a young man was a legend since he was young. In the Beast Emperor sect, he had always been a peak-level character, looking down with disdain on his peers. It was said that even when several peak-level characters of the same generation joined forces, they still couldn't defeat him. When these two young men clashed, it was as though they had met their match. It was hard to tell who would emerge victorious. One was the number one ranker of the younger generation of the Beast Emperor sect, while the other was the representative of the younger generation of the Xinjiang Gate. This was an intense battle, representing the strength of the younger generation of the Beast Emperor sect and the Xinjiang Gate. The sounds of battle reverberated through the air, causing the mountains to tremble. He stood in the distance, narrowing his eyes. He could sense that both Xiao Jun and Jianwu hadn't used their full strength yet. They were both probing each other. Neither of them dared to use their full strength. If not, they would definitely suffer a great loss in the final battle tomorrow. However, He could tell that both of them were extremely strong. Both of them had unfathomable depths to them. Watching the battle between the two young men, Yi's heart was pounding with excitement. He wanted to go up and fight, but he restrained himself. Just as Yi expected, the battle between the two of them was extremely intense. However, after exchanging over 100 moves, the two of them seemed to have come to a tacit understanding as they both paused at the same time. They are both probing each other. Yi silently mused. Before tomorrow, the two of them wouldn't use their full strength. Both of them were extremely strong, and even if one of them could defeat the other, the victor would definitely have to pay a heavy price. After which, the two young men separated, no longer continuing their battle. Too strong. Outside the valley, the onlookers were very excited and shocked. They were able to see the real battle ahead of time. They were looking forward to the real battle tomorrow. Yi quietly continued on his way. When he saw Lord Xiaoxi and Jianwu, he relaxed slightly. It would appear that everyone had encountered obstacles along the way. He was not the only one. Lord Xiaoxi and Jianwu were nearby as well. He would not be able to delay them for long. In the following period of time, Yi encountered several barbarian beasts blocking his path. However, Yi did not make a move. It was not worth it, as it consumed too much yuan qi. He only secretly released the aura of the Origin Supreme technique, and it was enough to scare away those barbarian beasts. He had originally wanted to capture a barbaric beast as a means of transportation to reduce his energy consumption. However, he thought that this place was too dangerous. Furthermore, there were illusions here, and it was impossible to guard against them. In the end, he had no choice but to give up. In front of him was a dense forest that reeked of blood. There were fluctuations of yuan qi that had yet to dissipate completely. He focused his attention and saw that many young men and women were in a sorry state. Their bodies were stained with blood, and there were many corpses of barbaric beasts in front of them. It was obvious that they had just experienced a great battle. Seeing that there was a newcomer, the group of young men and women instantly became vigilant. Someone immediately began to collect the fur, horns, and other items from the barbaric demonic beast below. These were all treasures and were extremely valuable. They were afraid that Yi would fight for them. The rest of the people looked at Yi cautiously. They had formed a group, and were working together. He smiled faintly. He did not care about the barbaric beasts, and he would not find trouble with others for no reason. It seems to be Isu from the Bawang sect. It's him. But some people recognize Isu from the Bawang sect was with the people from the Yuqin Palace. Many people remembered Su Yi's name, and they recognized him with a single glance. Many people looked at Su Yi with vigilance. Among them, there was a complicated look. There was a hint of coldness in his eyes, but more than that, there was fear in his eyes. Su Yi noticed that there was a young man with a powerful qi. He was actually a disciple of the Holy Mountain. Su Yi raised his eyebrows. Could it be that these people were especially vigilant against him? With a disciple of the Holy Mountain, these people must have some relationship with the Holy Mountain. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. Su Yi was not happy with the Holy Mountain, but he was not interested in these people. He turned and left. Huff, huff. Watching Su Yi leave, many people secretly heaved a sigh of relief, as if they had just been pardoned. They all knew that Isu of the Overlord sect didn't seem to be on good terms with the Holy Mountain, and they were afraid that he would attack. Bawang sect's Isu, humph, death is near. The Holy Mountain disciple sneered coldly. Bawang sect's Isu seemed to be very strong, but this time he was going to die. Su Yi continued on his way. Not long after, there was a huge commotion in front of him. There were continuous roars of barbaric beasts. Then, Su Yi leaped onto a huge rock and saw a figure in front of him fighting fiercely with more than 10 ferocious savage beasts. The figure was wearing a white robe. Although he was fighting with more than 10 ferocious barbaric beasts, his footsteps were elegant and agile. Yuan Qi swept out from the young man's feet. His feet were constantly tapping on the ground. His body was sometimes soaring into the sky, sometimes like an afterimage. Yuan Qi was gushing out from his hands. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, whoa. There were continuous muffled sounds, and barbaric beasts were falling to the ground. So familiar. Su Yi felt that the figure was familiar from afar. It was as if he had seen him somewhere before. It could be seen that the figure was very strong. In just a short while, more than 10 ferocious barbaric beasts were lying in a pool of blood. The white-robed young man also leaped over, as if he had already noticed Su Yi. He said, "It's really you. I was looking for you. I didn't expect to meet you here." A familiar voice, a familiar figure. The young man landed under the huge rock and looked up at Su Yi. He was wearing a white robe with mysterious patterns on his sleeves. His slender and beautiful fingers were like a woman's. He had killed more than 10 barbaric beasts without a trace of blood. His face was so handsome that even men would want to take a few more glances at him. It's him. Su Yi recognized this young man, and he had a deep impression of him. He had a handsome face with clear edges and sharp black eyes beneath his long eyelashes. His figure was slender and thin, and he naturally possessed a cold, arrogant, and lonely aura that caused others to be unable to help but want to get close to him. It was precisely the powerful young man he'd met in Central Continent City that had defeated Cheng Qingfeng, who'd been winning continuously. His name was Su Chun. "You're looking for me?" Staring at Su Chun, Su Yi was secretly on guard. Su Chun stood there quietly, exuding an aura of disdain for the heavens and earth. He didn't lose his elegance, but the invisible aura emanating from him caused Su Yi to be on guard. He was unfathomable. "Yes, I've been looking for you. I have something to discuss with you." Chapter 764. What's the matter? Although the young man in front of him gave off a sense of intimacy, Su Yi didn't let down his guard. In the sacred martial secret world, one must always be on guard against others. "Is the nebula Ganoderma on you?" Su Chin directly looked at Su Yi and asked. He didn't evade his gaze and asked openly. "In the auction house, the person who bid against Sacred Mountain was you." Su Yi finally remembered. His voice was also familiar. It turned out that the person who had competed with the Sacred Mountain for the Nebula Spirit Grass until the price reached over 10,000 three-star source stones, and the person who had competed with him for the Nebula Spirit Grass until the price reached 23,000 three-star source stones was this Su Chun. When the Nebula Ganoderma was mentioned, Su Yi's expression suddenly became even more vigilant. However, Su Yi wasn't too afraid. This was the sacred martial secret world, and no other experts would enter. Although Su Chen was unfathomable, Su Yi wasn't scared to the point of retreating. Yes, it's me. Su Chen nodded. He knew that the nebula Ganoderma was obtained by Yi Su. With some expectation in his eyes, he said, "To be honest, I need the nebula Ganoderma as a gift. However, the things I have on me are barely enough to cover the pills I have on me. Although I have a few personal items that are worth a lot, I can't sell them. Therefore, I want to exchange the nebula Ganoderma with items worth 23,000. At the same time, I, Su Chen, will owe you a favor. I will definitely repay you in the future." Su Yi stared at Su Chen. This guy had items worth 23,000 3-star nebula Ganoderma and a few personal items that were worth a lot. Their value must be amazing. This Su Chen definitely had a great background. It could be seen from his fight with Cheng Qingfeng. /K cool C craftsman net Chu Zinc version initial A+ hair 0. However, Su Yi did not intend to take out the nebula Ganoderma. Although the nebula Ganoderma was with him, it was something that the merciless West had been searching for. He could not afford any accidents. Moreover, even if it was the nebula Ganoderma that Su Yi bought with a debt of 20,100 3-star origin stones, how could Su Yi sell an item that was worth 23,000 3-star origin stones? Although this Su Chen's favor seemed to be worth more than 103-star essence stones, Su Yi did not believe it. "I don't intend to sell it." Su Yi shook his head and planned to leave. He didn't want to have anything to do with Su Chen. The nebula Ganoderma didn't plan to leave. Even if Su Chen increased the price, he wouldn't sell it. "Please think about it. I really need this nebula Ganoderma as a gift. If you have any requests, as long as it's within my capabilities, I will agree to them." Su Chen was unwilling to give up. He stepped in front of Su Yi with a smile on his face. There was a sincere expectation in his smile. He hoped that he could get the nebula Ganoderma. "I don't have any requests. I also have a great use for the nebula Ganoderma. I will not sell exclusively." Su Yi's expression was very firm. This was something that belonged to the merciless West. No matter how high the price was, it would not be sold exclusively. Looking at Su Chen's sincerity, he didn't want to waste his time. Looking at Su Yi's firm expression, Su Chen's eyes were filled with disappointment. "Goodbye." Su Yi stepped sideways. He didn't want to waste any more time. He wanted to leave the sacred martial secret world as soon as possible. He couldn't afford any mistakes. "Su, I'm sorry." Su Chen's figure flashed. His movement technique was strange and unpredictable. He once again blocked in front of Su Yi. He looked at Su Yi and said apologetically, "If that's the case, then I have no choice but to take action. You want to take it by force?" Su Yi was stunned, and the corner of his mouth twitched a little. But after thinking about it carefully, it was normal. This was the sacred martial secret world, and there were no specific rules. It was not strange for people to want to snatch treasures when they saw them. "That's not what I meant. I really have no choice. Even if you lose, there are things that are worth 23,000 3-star primordial stones. I won't let you suffer a loss." Su Chen shook his head and explained to Su Yi seriously. He didn't want to take it by force. He just wanted to exchange it. "You seem to be a bit forceful." Su Yi secretly took a deep breath and stopped in his tracks. The expression on his face gradually turned solemn. It seemed that this battle was unavoidable. "I really have no choice. Please forgive me. I have a friend who likes the nebula Ganoderma. Please give it to him." Su Chen looked at Su Yi apologetically. However, there was an irresistible aura in his eyes. No matter what, he had to get the nebula Ganoderma today. "Then let's see if you have the ability." Although Su Yi knew that Su Chen was unfathomable and his strength was not to be underestimated, as someone of the same generation, Su Yi had his own temper. "If people don't offend me, I won't offend them." This was Su Yi's life motto. But now that the other party was so aggressive, there was no need to endure it. "Chi!" Su Chen seemed to have sensed the hostile look in Su Yi's eyes. He tossed the interspatial bag in his hand to the top of a towering tree over 60 meters away and hung it high up. He then nodded at Su Yi and said, "If you win, we'll let this go. If you lose, please hand over the nebula Ganoderma. Let's see if you have the ability." Su Yi's expression became serious. A wave of primordial chi spread out from his body. "I know you are very strong, but today you will lose. Although it is not what I want." As Su Chen's voice fell, an elegant but vigorous primordial chi suddenly rose from his body. Boom! The vigorous chi that was close to Su Yi caused the sand and rocks around him to fly. The impact caused the rocks to fly, causing Su Yi's robe to flutter and his hair to dance. However, Su Yi stood in the same place as if he was afraid. His figure did not move at all. We will know who wins and who loses later. As soon as his voice fell, Su Yi directly attacked. This was not a competition. Su Chen's goal was to snatch his nebula Ganoderma. Naturally, there was no need to be polite. Chi, close at hand, Su Yi shook his arm and a fingerprint swept out. In front of his fingertip, crimson primordial chi condensed like lightning. It shattered the air into mist-like ripples and spread out. The fingerprint was like a crimson lightning bolt that streaked across and headed straight for Su Chen. "You are indeed very strong." Su Chen seemed to have heard of Su Yi's reputation. Looking at Su Yi's instant attack, whether it was speed or momentum, he was secretly shocked. However, he seemed to have been prepared. On his handsome face, a faint light flickered in his clear eyes. This light flashed and disappeared, revealing his confidence. At the same time, a primordial chi light flashed under his feet. As Su Chen's figure brushed against the ground and retreated, a white primordial chi light enveloped his entire body. A vigorous pressure immediately swept out. Chapter 765. At this moment, Su Chen stepped to the side and stomped the ground. White origin energy wrapped around his hands and formed a hand seal. A claw shot towards Su Yi's shoulder. This claw imprint was very strange. The white yuan chi light fluctuated like clouds and mist. The claw imprint gave birth to clouds, giving off a feeling like a dragon's claw. It emitted a great pressure and was extraordinary. Its aura made people tremble for no reason. Su Yi was also surprised when the claw came out. He immediately executed the Fuyao 100 transformation steps to the extreme. His figure also took the opportunity to step out and escape from the dragon claw. The claw print did not land on Su Yi's shoulder as he dodged it. However, a sharp gust of wind brushed past his neck, causing Su Yi's skin to sting. A few strands of hair were directly twisted off, and a faint trace of blood could be seen on the skin on his neck. Seeing Su Yi avoid his attack, Su Chen was even more surprised. "My Dragon Cloud hand is not easy to dodge," Su Chen said. His movement technique was mysterious, and his voice seemed to reach Su Yi's ears. He closed in once more, and the claw changed. With a flick of his wrist, the white cloud trembled, and like a dragon claw, it shot towards Su Yi's throat. "Is that so? But I don't plan on dodging." Although Su Yi was surprised, he already knew just how terrifying Su Chen was. Although they had only exchanged 2 moves, Su Yi already knew just how powerful Su Chen was. The true fighting spirit in his heart was aroused. He shook his arm, and a fist wrapped in red origin energy smashed into the claw. The two collided, and a muffled sound echoed. In an instant, a dazzling origin energy erupted, and a strong wind swept out like a storm. The two young figures were forced back and separated upon contact. The two of them staggered back at the same time. They raised their eyes to look at each other. Their eyes met, and their eyes were filled with shock. Su Yi couldn't help but be shocked. Su Chen, who was so handsome that even men would be moved by him, seemed so soft and delicate, but his strength was abnormally strong. Su Yi hadn't been able to take advantage of him at all. Compared to Su Yi, Su Chen was far more shocked than Su Yi. Their eyes met, and neither of them spoke. At this moment, both of them knew that although they did not underestimate their opponent in the beginning, they also did not truly take their opponent seriously. Right now, both of them knew that the person they were facing was a truly formidable opponent. The two of them faced each other from afar. Their auras fluctuated and shook the surroundings. The atmosphere was tense for no reason. Come on. At a certain moment, the two of them seemed to have some kind of tacit understanding as they simultaneously rushed out. Their figures seemed to be accompanied by a series of afterimages as they transformed into flowing lights and shockingly collided with each other. Two silhouettes crossed each other. The sound of wind breaking resounded, bringing with it astral winds. Elemental yuan qi light burst forth, and muffled sounds kept exploding from the collision of yuan qi. The two of them continued to exchange blows. Both of their figures were equally unpredictable. Their speed was extremely fast, so fast that people of the same generation could only see two blurry shadows. Sand and pebbles were sent flying in all directions. Broken rocks were blasted into the air, and a strong gust of wind swept up the dust. Rumbling noises were constantly heard. The two young men were enveloped in yuan qi halos. Yuan qi gushed out from their hands as their figures flashed and collided with each other. An astonishing collision sound rang out. Energy surged, and the two figures were directly pushed back. Suyi's feet scraped against the ground. He took several steps back before stabilizing his momentum. His hair was a little disheveled, and his expression was more focused. However, the fighting spirit in his eyes was even stronger. He had not used his true strength all this time. He had not used any of the methods of the Origin Supreme art, but it could be said that he had used almost all of his strength. However, he had not gained the slightest advantage. How could Sui not be shocked? The young man in front of him was only a few years older than him, but he was even stronger than Ouyang Jinwei on the Sacred Mountain. He could even feel that Su Chun, like him, had not used his true strength until now. I didn't expect you to be stronger than I imagined. You're really an exception. The Central Continent is really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Su Chun stopped. He had not gained the slightest advantage. He stabilized his momentum and looked at Su Yi in front of him. He was completely moved. This Isu from the Bawang sect was much stronger than he had imagined. Boom! When his voice fell, the expression on Su Chen's incomparably handsome face tensed up a lot. The yuan qi in his body surged as he formed a hand seal. White yuan qi rushed out like a storm, causing gusts of wind to howl and gusts of wind to blow. This battle was too shocking. A terrifying storm swept out in all directions. Su Chen's figure rose into the air and appeared in the center of the storm. Be careful, I won't hold back next. Su Chen looked down at Sui. The storm around him fluctuated, causing the air to emit whistling sounds. Storm Dragon Shadow. Su Chen attacked again. The terrifying storm swept out and turned into a faintly discernible shadow of a flood dragon. A faint dragon roar resounded. It brought with it a terrifying pressure that caused the air to tremble as it charged towards Su Yi. Chilala, this kind of power caused the earth to crack and the mountains to shake. It was extremely shocking. At the same time, Su Yi's eyes quietly surged with a vortex of light. A terrifying aura filled with an ancient aura, as if it could suppress everything, spread out in all directions. Ancient crimson seal. In the next moment, Su Yi shouted in his heart, and a fierce yuan qi gushed out. A blazing aura suddenly rotated on his palm, bringing with it a wave-like whistling sound. It instantly gathered together, as if countless flames had gathered to form a small sea of fire. The aura of the handprint was scorching and terrifying. It burned the air and swept out with an ancient pressure. In an instant, the two collided fiercely. Hualala. Yuan qi erupted in all directions, covering everything. A terrifying aura swept out in all directions, causing the ground to explode. Ka, ka. Cracks spread across the surface of the ground like a spider web, and rumbling noises continued to resound from the point of collision. Ao, ao. A dragon roar resounded and the space became chaotic. The astonishing commotion lasted for several breaths of time before it calmed down. Ding ding. Before everything could calm down, the two figures staggered back a dozen steps. The rocks under their feet turned to dust, and the ground caved in. Su Chun and Su Yi's faces also turned pale. Their eyes stared at each other as their hearts beat faster. The surroundings gradually calmed down. The auras of the two surged, and for some reason, the air became even more tense. I underestimated you. It seems that this is not the time to decide the victor. I feel that I will have to pay a great price to defeat you. So, let's leave this battle for tomorrow. After a moment of silence, Su Chan suddenly looked to the side and said to Su Yi. As soon as he finished speaking, his white clothes fluttered and his real body left. Looking at Su Chen's departing figure, Su Yi's eyes moved. He also looked to the side and flew away. Not long after Su Yi and Su Chen disappeared, many figures came from afar. They were all alarmed by the huge commotion. There were experts fighting. They're very strong. It's very likely that they're from the top group. Chapter 766. After a brief moment, Su Chan stopped under a towering tree. He had unknowingly put away the interspatial bag that was originally hanging on the treetop. He could not help but let out a muffled groan. His face was pale, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His clear eyes were filled with shock as he mumbled, "Master's right. There's always someone better than you." The mountain path was winding. Su Yi's face was also pale. Fighting in the sacred martial secret world consumed too much energy. Su Yi couldn't help but let out a groan. He had suffered a loss. However, Su Yi was also very sure that Su Chen wasn't feeling well either. "Very strong," Su Yi secretly exclaimed. The sacred martial assembly was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. He already knew that Su Chan was very strong and unfathomable. After the fight, Su Yi was even more certain that he was a strong opponent. He was far stronger than Ouyang Jinwei from the Sacred Mountain. Although Su Chan hadn't really used his full strength, Su Yi was sure that he was definitely at the Yuanjun realm. His true strength was probably even more terrifying. See the original version, Chapter B, Section HM on 1800 or 595B. 5. There was a red light surging in Su Yi's eyes. He wasn't afraid. Instead, he was filled with fighting spirit. He hadn't used his full strength either. The sky had already begun to darken. The curtain of night slowly shrouded. Su Yi raised his eyes and looked at the sky. A day had already passed. He still didn't know where the exit of the sacred martial secret world was and how to break through this secret realm. He had to hurry up. The setting sun was like blood dyeing the mountains. Outside of Central Continent City, the mountains and thousands of peaks were clamoring endlessly, the noise reaching the heavens. Millions of people. In the end, only 32 people can set foot on the sacred martial stage. How cruel the competition is. It's not cruel. Only the true geniuses can enter the final battle. There are many dark horses this time. I wonder how many people can enter the final battle? The Bawang Sex, Isu should be fine. There's also Su Chun. His strength seems to be unfathomable. That's not necessarily the case. There are also many changes in the sacred martial secret world. Everyone was waiting for tomorrow's final battle. There were thousands of peaks in the surrounding mountains, and resting areas had already been set up on some of the mountains. The 5 sects and 3 factions, the Imperial Heavenly Palace and the Sacred Mountain. 10 mountain peaks stood tall, and the 10 strongest groups of experts occupied them. Although there are many geniuses from other factions, our Shunjian Gate also has Jian Wuk and Mu Yao. They will definitely be able to shine. It's a pity that Yun Lingfeng cannot participate. Otherwise, our Shunjian Gate will be able to reap great rewards. On the mountain peak where Shunjian Gate was located, there were many people sitting in a pavilion. Elder Bai Mingshan was among them. His eyes were filled with anticipation, but more than that, they were filled with regret and displeasure. In Bai Mingshan's opinion, if his disciples could participate in the sacred martial conference, They would definitely shine even brighter in this Heaven's Pride competition. Bai Mingshan was clear that after his disciples obtained the sacred artifact and inheritance from the patriarch, their cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. If Su Yi is not dead, our Shunjian Gate will be able to suppress the 5 sects and 3 factions. We will be able to compete with the Sacred Mountain. Elder Duan Yuerong rolled her eyes at Elder Bai Mingshan. She did not like Elder Bai Mingshan. Everyone knew that Yun Lingfeng wanted to get rid of Su Yi on purpose. If Su Yi was still alive, no one knew who would inherit the patriarch's inheritance. If Su Yi was here in this sacred martial conference, he would probably be able to defeat everyone like he did in the Myriad Sword Conference. Elder Bai Mingshan was unhappy at the mention of Su Yi. However, when he saw Elder Saruga sitting in the middle, he did not dare to do anything to Elder Duan Yuerong. Roar! On the mountain peak, there were several ancient black-scaled demonic dragons. Their eyes were half closed, and they looked extremely ferocious. This was the lineup of the Heavenly Xian sect. Many experts were seated, and their auras froze the void. This time, the young disciples of the other forces are not ordinary. An elder spoke. This time, many of the young disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions were not ordinary. Indeed, Jian Wanyan smiled and said softly, "But tomorrow, our Heavenly Xian sect will definitely shock everyone. Haha, Gong Qianxing has been hiding for so long. It's all for tomorrow." The experts of the Heavenly Xian sect looked at each other and smiled. Only they knew how long the Heavenly Xian sect had prepared for this sacred martial assembly and how much effort they had put in. Everything depended on Gong Qianxing. In tomorrow's final battle, the Heavenly Xian sect would be able to suppress the 5 sects and 3 factions. Roar! The golden-eyed flying tiger sat there, occasionally roaring and shaking the mountains. On the mountain peak, in the Beast Emperor sect, many experts were seated. Many of them were standing and looking in the direction of the sacred martial secret world. It's almost time. Tomorrow will be the real battle. One of the elders from the Beast Emperor sect looked at Huang Xiaolong expectantly. The tallest mountain peak was as tall as the clouds. Under the sunlight, 2 huge flood dragons could be seen. Their bodies were covered in green scales, and there were 2 horns on their heads. They looked fierce and majestic, and their red eyes were like 2 bright suns. They were constantly looking around. It's about time. Wang Chuanda looked at the sky. According to the distance in the sacred martial secret world, no matter which direction one came from, they would have to rush to the center. At this time, there should be more and more people. The evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear. But if we can get the wooden box from the demon's subduing sect, it's nothing. Elder Bingqiao sneered as a cold light flashed in his eyes. That brat Isu from the Overlord sect had provoked the sacred mountain time and time again. He was simply courting death, and the evils he brought on himself were the hardest to bear. That brat must die. Quan Guilon's eyes flashed coldly. If that brat didn't die, the hatred in her heart wouldn't be appeased. Night fell, and the sacred martial secret world was exactly the same as the outside world. Stars dotted the sky, and the moonlight was like water, cascading down from the sky and covering the ancient forest. It was as if the vast forest was shrouded in a faint, cold silver light, making it seem mysterious and hazy. If it weren't for the occasional beast roars that resounded in the wilderness, one would have thought that this was a paradise. Under the night sky, Su Yi's figure shuttled through the forest. He had no choice but to be more careful. Along the way, Su Yi consumed healing elixirs to recover his vitality. He also encountered many dangers along the way, but he also had some gains. Chapter 767. Oh, the roars of beasts could be heard from time to time. Above the ancient forest, a pair of huge wings could be seen flapping from time to time, causing the air to whistle and the forest to rise and fall. There were ferocious birds passing by, their ferocious eyes like blood moons. Su Yi was not afraid of these beasts, but he was too lazy to waste time. He would avoid them as much as possible. In the dark night, Su-yi had no choice but to slow down a little. It was very quiet in front of him, without any sound. This silence made Su-yi feel that something was wrong, and he became even more focused. Boom! Just as Su-yi was focused, the front suddenly trembled. With a muffled sound, light erupted, and an aura rushed out, followed by a figure. This figure was in a sorry state. He was wearing a white robe, his hair was messy, and his eyes were dazzling. When he saw Su-yi, he was a little surprised, but he did not say anything. He formed a hand seal, and a claw-like hand seal directly grabbed at Su-yi. Su-yi's expression changed. He shook his arm, and a fist seal directly collided with the claw-like hand. Bang! With a muffled sound, energy erupted, and the two figures were pushed back by the flying sand and stones. Hey, you're really Yi-Su, I'm out. At the same time that the former's figure was pushed back, joy immediately surged onto his face. A smile appeared on his incomparably handsome face, but his complexion was as pale as ash. His hair was disheveled, and he appeared to be in a very sorry state. There was even a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It's you. Su-yi was stunned. Who else could this person be other than Su-chun? They had just fought 4 hours ago, and now they met again. Be careful. There's an illusion here, and it's very powerful. I almost couldn't get out. Su-chan put a pill in his mouth to remind Su-yi. He had just entered an illusion, and it was very powerful. He was also injured, so when he saw Su-yi just now, he thought it was an illusion. Su-yi's eyes moved. When he saw Su-chin's sorry state, he could more or less guess what had happened. Su-chan had also suffered from that illusion, so the illusion he had just encountered must have been even more terrifying. Thank you. Su-yi thanked Su-chan for reminding him. You're welcome, but that illusion was really difficult to deal with. L newer B new D. Most L asterisk quickly up S270% X005/9. Su-chun smiled bitterly. He had consumed a lot of his energy, and he was injured. Are you okay? Do you want to adjust your breath? I can protect you, Su-yi said to Su-chun. All right, thank you for your hard work. Just wait for me for 4 hours. To Su-chin's time, he nodded and smiled. To close his eyes, to of course, to Su. He was in a hurry to get out of the sacred martial secret world as soon as possible, but now he had to wait for another 4 hours. Su-yi looked at Su-chun, who was not far away. His body was gradually enveloped in a circle of white light. It was connected to the moonlight, and it was filled with an ancient aura. It was a pressure of heaven and earth. Wisps of yuan qi lingered around his body. It was very mysterious. Su-yi had no choice. He was the one who asked. Su-yi felt helpless, but he could only wait. Looking at Su-chun, Su-yi sized him up. As he breathed and adjusted his breathing, his aura was also extraordinary. The cultivation technique he cultivated was probably not simple. Su-chin's aura spread out. Su-yi had a feeling that Su-chin's cultivation technique might not be inferior to the heavenly fate ancient scripture. The pressure of heaven and earth and the ancient aura was not something an ordinary cultivation technique could possess. Phew! Su-yi took a deep breath. He could only sit cross-legged not far away and wait for Su-chun. After all, Su-chun trusted him so much that he was defenseless. It was not good to just leave. The surroundings were still very quiet. Occasionally, there would be a night breeze and a ferocious bird flying through the night sky. Su-yi's thoughts were in a mess. Although his cultivation had improved very quickly along the way, it was still far from enough. Late at night, time slowly passed. At a certain moment, Su-yi's eyes suddenly overflowed. He immediately stared at a huge rock to the side. The night was very deep, and there was only darkness behind the rock. However, it did not take long for a scarlet light to appear. It gradually grew larger and finally turned into a pair of huge, ferocious eyes. In the deep night, it was particularly terrifying. Under the faint moonlight, Su-yi saw the true appearance of the huge, ferocious eyes. It was a huge, ferocious beast that was 20 feet tall. Its body was covered in barbed hair. Its face was hideous and ugly. Its fangs were sharp, and its head was like a wild boar's. Its body emitted a dark light. The ferocious beast's ferocious eyes stared at Su Chun, as if attracted by Su Chen's aura. However, it also saw Su Yi. For some reason, it seemed to have sensed Su Yi's aura, causing the ferocious beast to secretly feel uneasy and astonished. However, when the ferocious beast looked at Su Yi, it was not completely afraid. Instead, a ferocious and ruthless aura surged within it as its ferocious eyes stared tightly at Su Yi. Brute demon hyena beast. Su Yi was a little surprised. It was actually a brute demon hyena beast. Although this type of brute demon beast bloodline was not very high, it was very special. It was born with low intelligence, but was very powerful. When it fought, it was even more ferocious and would not rest until it was dead. Woo-woo. The brute demon hyena beast seemed to have been provoked when it saw Su Yi's gaze. It immediately released a provoked roar from its throat. Its huge feet stomped on the ground, and its huge body directly charged towards Su Yi amidst the flying sand and rocks behind its forehooves. A ferocious aura immediately rushed towards Su Yi. Level 1 Demon True Stage. At this moment, Su Yi was even more surprised. The brute demon hyena beast with low intelligence would normally reach the limit of the demon spirit stage. However, this brute demon hyena beast actually had the aura of a level 1 demon true stage. It must have consumed some kind of heavenly treasure to have such a cultivation. At this moment, with Su Chun nearby, Su Yi could not use the Origin Supreme technique and reveal his true strength. It would be difficult for him to completely suppress the brute demon hyena beast. However, even without using the Origin Supreme technique, Su Yi's cultivation was still powerful. The brute demon hyena beast was fast, but Su Yi was even faster. Just as the brute demon hyena beast's huge body arrived in front of Su Yi and was about to use its huge body to knock Su Yi over, Su Yi had already dodged. At the same time, Su Yi's figure leapt out. A fist wrapped in scarlet yuan qi heavily landed on the brute demon hyena beast's back. The brute demon hyena beast cultivation was indeed at level 1 demon true stage. However, although Su Yi had not stepped into the yuan true stage, his true strength had long surpassed an ordinary level 1 yuan true stage cultivator. He did not hold back in this punch. A ferocious power exploded and instantly sent the brute demon hyena beast flying towards the huge rock. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as the huge rock exploded and turned into dust. Cracks also appeared on the ground. Whoa! Chapter 768. Wherever this blood-red ball passed by, it would cause one's soul to feel a bloody aura and be affected. Su Yi stared at the blood-red ball, and his eyes darkened. However, he wasn't afraid and waved his hand. Yuan Qi circulated in his body, and the scarlet flame palm was shot out. It was like a sea of fire that slammed onto the blood-red ball. Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, muffled explosions were heard. A huge amount of energy spread out along with a bloody aura. It swept across the space and was dazzling. Woo! The brute demon hyena's huge body rushed over. Its long tusks were like ivory and emitted a bloody glow as it pierced towards Su Yi. Bastard! A level 1 demon true realm brute demon beast didn't have a powerful bloodline. Su Yi wasn't afraid and was prepared. He wrapped his palm with Yuan Qi and reached out to grab the ivory tusks. He immediately threw it out. Bang! Kacha! In an instant, the brute demon hyena's huge body was flipped over and landed heavily on the ground. Its tusks were also broken. Woo! The pitiful brute demon hyena cried out in pain as blood flowed out of its mouth. Oof! Su Yi leaped out and stomped his foot on the barbarian demon hyena's head. After that, 3 consecutive punches landed on its head. Bang, bang, bang. With a muffled sound, the brute demon hyena's head was split open and its skull was shattered. It was killed instantly as blood flowed out of its 7 orifices. Su didn't hold back and pulled out the brute demon hyena's tusks. They were treasures and were worth a lot. Thank you. Su Chen's voice was heard. He stood up and went to Su Yi's side. He looked at the brute demon hyena that was killed by Su Yi without any surprise. You're welcome. Su Yi had already sensed that Su Chen had stopped his breathing. The commotion just now must have alerted him. He looked at Su Chen. In such a short period of time, this guy seemed to be completely fine. We should go. Su Chen tidied up his clothes and smiled at Su Yi. If you don't mind, how about we travel together? Don't worry. Although I want the Nebula Ganoderma, I won't sneak attack you. Su Yi raised his eyebrows. Looking at this guy, he didn't look like someone who would launch a sneak attack. After a while, Su Yi finished packing up, and the two of them left together. Within the mountains and forests, two figures flew out. They were both hurrying on their way, not daring to waste any more time. Awoo! In the dark night, more and more barbaric beasts appeared in the sacred martial secret world. It seemed that the closer one got to the center, the stronger the barbaric beasts were. Along the way, Su Yi and Su Chen had to be extra careful as they faced all kinds of dangerous methods in the sacred martial secret world. However, with Su Yi and Su Chen's strength, the two of them constantly encountered dangers, but they were always able to overcome them. Let's discuss it. You won't lose out even if you give me the exclusive rights to the Nebula Ganoderma. I'm not selling. How about this? I'll give you 23,000 3-star origin stones first, and when I return, I'll give you another 23,000 3-star origin stones. How about double the price? I'm not selling. How can you be like this? How can you monopolize 3-star origin stones? I'm not selling. Along the way, Su Chen kept pestering Su Yi, wanting to buy the Nebula Ganoderma. However, no matter what, Su Yi only replied with one word, I'm not selling. Su Chen was helpless. This guy was really special. If it was someone else, they would have monopolized it long ago. Su Yi was also helpless. If it was his Nebula Ganoderma, he would have monopolized it long ago. Unfortunately, this Nebula Ganoderma belonged to the merciless West. However, along the way, the two of them traveled together and encountered dangers together, so they became more familiar with each other. Su Chen was even more familiar with Su Yi, so he didn't hold back. Time slowly passed, and the bright moon in the sky had already set in the west. Chapter *Z section plus previous percent cool craftsman net S 0 plus in the forest. Su Yi and Su Chen met many people in a short time. We should not be far from the center. The danger will also increase. We have to be careful, Su Chen said. Su Yi quietly released his soul power. He could already see many people. Everyone was far away, and no one had any intention of getting close. However, he could feel that their cultivation was on the strong side. They shouldn't be far from the center of the sacred martial secret world. It seems like someone is secretly watching you. Is it your enemy? Su Chen said to Su Yi, looking to the side. Following Su Chen's gaze, Su Yi saw several figures in the distance. Some of them were secretly sizing them up, and their gazes fell on him and Su Chen. It seems like it's not just this group. We've met several people along the way. Su Chen raised his eyebrows. They had met several people along the way, and they were secretly sizing them up. This wasn't strange, but these gazes were not normal. They were full of evasive gazes, which attracted Su Chen's attention. Su Yi also noticed. They had met many people along the way, but some of them looked very strange. They were evasive, but there was also obvious joy and fear. It was as if they had been searching for him. Su Yi didn't recognize these people. They didn't seem to be disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions, and they weren't disciples of the Sacred Mountain either. Are they looking for you? Su Yi raised his eyebrows and asked Su Chen. You'll know if you ask. Su Chen smiled. When he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. It was as if he left behind an afterimage. His speed was extremely fast, and when he reappeared, he was already beside those people. This caused their gazes to change drastically, and for some reason, they began to tremble. Who are you looking for? Su Chun asked those people. There was a friendly smile on his handsome face, and his voice was extremely charming. No, we're not looking for anyone. Hearing Su Chin's question, those people's cultivation wasn't bad, and they could be considered to be talented. But when facing Su Chun, they didn't know why. Perhaps because they had ulterior motives, their expressions changed greatly. If you're not looking for anyone, why are you feeling guilty? Tell me, are you looking for me or Isu? Su Chin looked at those people and asked. There was an indescribable majesty in his calm and clear eyes, making those people tremble for no reason. No, we're really not looking for anyone. Those people shook their heads, but they couldn't help but secretly glance at Su Yi in the distance. Su Chin's expression didn't change, and his tone became a little sharper. He asked, "Tell me, don't make me attack, or you'll regret it. Don't go too far. We're not beggars." Chapter 769. Each and every one of them possessed outstanding talent to begin with, and were the cream of the crop amongst the younger generation. Although they were not disciples of the 5 sects and 3 factions, they were still major factions from the Central Plains. How could they be so disdained by an unknown peer of the same age? As he looked at them, the expression on Su Chin's incomparably handsome face turned completely serious. Then I'll have to ask in a different way. As his indifferent words rang out, Su Chin's gaze landed on a young man in yellow clothes. Raising his gaze, he walked towards him. "Kid, you've gone too far." The young man in yellow clothes was no ordinary individual either. The Yuan power within his body immediately surged as he threw a punch at Su Chun. His peak 3rd level origin spirit stage cultivation gushed out without reservation, giving off a ferocious aura. Bang! Everything happened too quickly, so quickly that the group had yet to recover their wits. A low muffled sound had already spread from the young man's fist, as energy surged and exploded. Soon after, several stunned gazes saw that the fist of the yellow-clothed youth was unable to advance even an inch further, as if it was frozen in place. The palm in front of him was wrapped in a white Yuan power glow, directly covering and wrapping around his fist, causing him to be unable to move even an inch. The young man's expression changed drastically as shock filled his eyes. Crack! A cracking sound rang out from the former's fist as his fist and arm began to involuntarily rotate, following which a 360-degree rotation was visible to the naked eye before snapping in a manner that caused one's heart to palpitate. This was not a bone fracture, but a bone cracking and shattering as it spun. Oh! A miserable howl rang out from the young man's mouth like a pig being slaughtered. Blood spurted from the corner of his mouth as his face turned deathly pale and his eyes filled with terror. The few people around him had originally wanted to attack together, but upon seeing this scene, they were instantly indescribably terrified as their bodies turned limp for no reason. How could they not see that the strength of this handsome young man was not something they could contend against? Su Yi's figure walked over and stood beside Su Chun, his heart slightly moved. Although Su Chun appeared to be friendly and amiable, when he made a move, it was clear that he was no pushover. "I'll ask again. Who are you looking for?" Su Chun looked at the yellow-clothed youth and asked. His voice was still very pleasant to the ears. "We're not looking for you. We don't even know you. We're looking for Isu." The yellow-clothed youth wailed in agony. They did not know the white-clothed youth at all. They were only paying attention to the Bawang sex, Isu. They did not know who the white-clothed youth was. "You should have said so earlier." Su Chun faintly smiled and let go of the yellow-robed young man. He looked back at Su Yi and said with a hint of pride, "I told you I was looking for you. I don't have any enemies." Su Yi looked at Su Chun helplessly and raised his eyebrows. The few young men were flustered. They supported the yellow-clothed young man and were about to leave. "Tell me, why are you looking for me?" With Yuan Qi under his feet, Su Yi stood in front of them and asked them. They were flustered. They had long heard of the Bawang sex, Isu's reputation. Even Ouyang Jinwei of the Sacred Mountain was no match for him. How could they be his match? We just heard of your name and wanted to get to know you. A tall young man with a strange tattoo on his wrist gritted his teeth and said. The Bawang sex, Isu was no match for him, but there were some people they could not afford to offend. It seems that it's useless to talk nicely. Su, he said softly. A red light quietly surged in his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed forward and slapped at the tall young man. It was too fast. The young man saw Su Yi's palm coming and wanted to block it, but he found that he could not. The palm print enlarged in his eyes and landed on his lower abdomen like lightning. Bang! A low muffled sound came from the young man's lower abdomen. Uffed! The young man spat out blood as his body flew backward and landed heavily in the distance, causing the ground to crack. Ah! Then he screamed and wailed, holding his lower abdomen and rolling on the ground. Everyone could see that the young man's Dantian Sea of Qi had been destroyed. With his Dantian Sea of Qi shattered, he was equivalent to a cripple. Phew! Some people trembled and gasped. Their eyes were filled with horror. The young man did not even have the strength to block, and was turned into a cripple in one move. It was worse than being killed. Sui did not look at the young man. His deep eyes flashed with a cold light and a fierce aura. He asked the remaining people, "Why are you looking for me?" "Sir, it has nothing to do with us. It's the sacred mountain. They asked us to look for you." Some of the young men were afraid. They could not afford to offend the sacred mountain, but with Isu of the Bawang sect attacking so fiercely, they did not dare to offend him. The sacred mountain. Su Yi's eyes darkened at the mention of the sacred mountain. He looked at them and asked, "Tell me everything you know." The sacred mountain's disciples found us and asked us to help find your whereabouts. If we report your location immediately, we will be rewarded. But we don't know what to do. It really has nothing to do with us. The sacred mountain just asked us to keep an eye on you. The young men did not dare to hide anything and told him everything. Their sects and clans all relied on the sacred mountain to exist and survive. How could they dare to disobey? The sacred mountain's disciples asked them to keep an eye on this Bawang sect's Isu, and there was a reward. They naturally paid attention when they saw him. After learning everything, Su Yi's face darkened. Red light flashed in his deep eyes. It really was the sacred mountain. Phew! Secretly exhaling, Su Yi looked at these young men with a sharp gaze and asked, "The sacred mountain asked you to find me, so you did. Is it because I'm easy to bully?" "Isu, we've already told you. Don't go too far. Our sects have a close relationship with the sacred mountain. If you attack us, the sacred mountain will never let you go." A young man gritted his teeth and mustered his courage to speak to Su Yi. "It seems that I'm easy to bully. Since your sects have a relationship with the sacred mountain, I'll fulfill your wish." At the same time, Su Yi's eyes surged with coldness. Then, screams and wails resounded in the night, echoing throughout the mountain range. The young men vomited blood one by one, holding their abdomens and rolling on the ground. They were all crippled. Su Yi did not hold back. Since they had a relationship with the sacred mountain and were looking for him, there was no need to be polite. The sacred mountain doesn't seem easy to deal with. It seems your enemy is not ordinary. Chapter 770. It seems that we can part ways. The sacred mountain is not ordinary. You'd better not cause any trouble, Su Yi said to Su Chun. The sacred mountain seems to be very strong, but I didn't provoke them. They won't find trouble with me, so we can still go together, Su Chun said with a smile. He had no intention of leaving. Su Yi didn't say much. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the few people who were still screaming on the ground. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" Su Chun looked at Su Yi and asked with interest. "They want to find me, so I'll do as they wish." Su Yi's lips curled into a cold smile. Before entering the sacred martial secret world, Merciless West had warned him that the sacred mountain would make a move. At that time, he had already decided that if the sacred mountain really wanted to deal with him, he wouldn't mind making them pay a price. He had already used the disguise technique, but the sacred mountain still had their eyes on him. This was the sacred martial secret world. It was said that even strong masters couldn't monitor his entry, so Su-Yi didn't need to worry too much. Do you need my help? If you do, we can discuss it. As for the nebula Ganoderma, Su-Chun smiled embarrassedly, his gaze shifting. No discussion, no sale. Su-Yi refused very straightforwardly. The sacred martial secret world really didn't have people from the sacred mountain. Night filled the sky. Stars broke through the curtain of night. In the ancient forest, the night's humidity permeated the air. From a few screaming youths, Su-Yi asked how to find a way to contact the disciples of the sacred mountain. These people had already told Su-Yi everything they knew. They were full of fear and told Su-Yi that as soon as they entered the sacred martial secret world, they were ordered by the disciples of the sacred mountain to find Isu of the Bawang sect. If they had any news, they were to inform the disciples of the sacred mountain. Because in the sacred martial secret world, they couldn't be together, but the disciples of the sacred mountain had a way to contact each other. Is that so? He was somewhat dissatisfied. It seems like he had to rely on fate to meet a disciple of the holy mountain. However, as long as he found a disciple of the holy mountain, he would be able to find the others. What about these people? Su-Chun asked Su-Yi. In the sacred martial secret world, these fellows had been crippled. If they stayed here, it would be disastrous. Looking at these people, Su-Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light. Looking into Su-Yi's eyes, the young men's eyes twitched in fear. Their faces were ashen and despair filled their eyes. Su-Yi's gaze sent a chill down their spines and sent chills down their spines. Only now did they realize that the sacred mountain was not to be trifled with. They originally thought that they would be able to obtain a reward from the sacred mountain, but who knew that they would meet a fiend? If even the disciples of the sacred mountain were looking for him, how could he be easy to deal with? They realized it too late. You chose to hand me over to the sacred mountain, so you must pay the price. So he made up his mind. Killing intent flashed across his eyes. Leaving these people behind was not a wise choice. He already had enough enemies, so he didn't want to provoke more trouble. A moment later, screams resounded through the night sky. Su-Yi made his move. The young men were killed, and their space bag were taken by Su-Yi. Su-Chen's expression did not change. He watched Su-Yi's actions with a smile on his face, but there was a slight fluctuation in his eyes. At night, the moonlight poured down on the vast ancient mountain forest, casting a mottled silver light between the treetops of the mountain range. Bang! Bang! Half an hour later, rocks exploded and towering trees cracked. Two young men were dripping with blood, their vitality fading. Big Dipper sect. Su-Yi remembered this mountain sect. These two people were from the Big Dipper sect, and they were also looking for him. They seemed to have a good relationship with the sacred mountain. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the distance, there was the sound of wind breaking. Someone had heard the commotion and was rushing over. They were getting closer and closer to the center of the sacred martial secret world. Although those who could reach here the fastest were the strongest of the younger generation, there were not many of them. However, at this moment, the area near the center of the sacred martial secret world was getting smaller and smaller. The chances of encountering them were getting higher and higher. Su-Yi did not know who was coming, but he did not want to expose himself. After killing these two disciples of the Big Dipper sect, Su-Yi did not want to cause any unnecessary trouble. Although Su-Yi had remembered the Big Dipper sect, now was not the time to expose himself. The disciples of the Big Dipper sect are very strong. Someone did it, and the person is very terrifying. Soon, several people appeared here. They all had extraordinary temperaments, and the fluctuations of their auras were vigorous. They examined the two corpses on the ground. It was obvious that these corpses were not done by the sacred martial secret world, but rather by someone else. They recognized the two corpses. Even the best of the younger generation of the Big Dipper sect had been killed in one move. One could imagine how terrifying the person who could kill these two people was. Be careful. These people then left, all of them being very careful. When these people left, two figures quietly landed on a towering tree not far away. They were Su-Yi and Su-Chun. Not long after, in this ancient forest, another person was killed. 3 young men lay together in a pool of blood. The mystic Yuan sect. He put away a few space bags and remembered this sect. It was another sect that obeyed the orders of the sacred mountain. It was not difficult to find these people. As long as Su-yi appeared, their eyes would be very special, and they would be different. #0, the bright moon set in the west, and a touch of gray gradually appeared in the eastern sky. In this ancient mountain forest, screams resounded from time to time. In 4 hours, Su-yi attacked several times. He also remembered the mystic Yuan sect, Big Dipper sect, and Big Dipper sect. Su-yi did not show mercy. If someone wanted to deal with him, then there was no need to be polite. If he was not strong enough and fell into the hands of these people, his fate would be unimaginable. Aren't you afraid that I'll leak the news and tell the mystic Yuan sect, Big Dipper sect, and Big Dipper sect that it was you who did it? Suchin said faintly. He had been following Su-yi. When he saw how fierce Su-yi was, he directly killed him because he did not want to be exposed. One had to know that these disciples were the pinnacle of the younger generation of those mountain sections. They were the blood, sweat, and tears of those mountain sections. If they knew that these disciples were killed by Su-yi, those experts in the mountain sects would definitely go crazy. At that time, they would definitely not let this guy go. How can I keep it a secret? Su-yi smiled and took out a lot of space bags. He asked Su-chun, how about I give you half? Hearing this, Su-chin's face lit up. He immediately said, no need, no need. As long as you sell the Nebula Ganoderma to me. I'm not selling. Su-yi turned around and refused without hesitation. You're playing with me. Do you believe that I won't tell on you? Thought you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.